hard time just living it.
Oh, me too.
Yeah.
Only been my family died of sudden cardiac arrest. I'm gonna pass.
Yes.
Hey, Jim.
I'm not sure what
You
it
got it really small, right now.
is. He's backing in, we'll wait a minute. then. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty
He was supposed
and
to,
justice.
yeah, he's supposed to email it to you. And copy. It's a problem, so, right?
Okay, first we're gonna have Brian
Thanks.
and possibly Kevin if he needs to support, talk to us about what's going on with the innkeeper tracks.
Good morning, everybody. I just wanted to provide an update of what our quality of life work group is doing ever since the innkeeper's tax was being talked about regarding the increase. So this group was originated as an innkeeper's tax work group, and we started talking about, or we started meeting back in, I would say, early March regarding the innkeeper's tax. And it has since evolved really into a quality of life work group. And what we're wanting to do is ensure transparent strategic use of this new revenue throughout the county. It was important to all of us on this group that this revenue benefited not only our tourism sector, but our local residents as well. And we're really utilizing the innkeeper's tax code in order to guide a lot of our decisions. So our progress so far to date is in public engagements. So we held forums on June 4th and June 12th, with all meetings open to the public thereafter. Residents voiced support for recreation trails and visible projects. Some concerns were voiced about scope and governance. This group has really focused in on 4 priority areas: quality of life, and there's some examples listed there in the parentheses: parks and recreation, tourism, capital infrastructure, and economic development. We've been fortunate enough to have expert discussions come in from the Indiana, from IDEA, over the formation of an economic development corporation, and then also to applying for the Sustaining Hoosier Communities through the IU Center for Rural Engagement, which is an unbelievable free service that could really benefit projects for Brown County. We have all recognized the need for Brown County to have an EDC, to be a conveyor and collaborative body to guide economic and community development efforts in Brown County. Sustainability is key. Projects must be able to serve our locals while being able to be used for tourism development with existing statute. How can they generate revenue to maintain their infrastructure is a key aspect to project development. Legal and governance clarity. Funds cannot be transferred to or from the general fund. CBC can directly contract with nonprofits, local government, and for-profit entities, and nonprofits remain eligible for grants under CBC review. As far as the allocation model that we're using is a nonprofit would apply for the innkeeper's tax funds. The Quality of Life Board would review using a rubric and interview process, and then that group would forward those recommendations to the CBC with final funding approval by the county council through the appropriation mechanism. So where are we at right now? We're in the process of really kind of finalizing governance. We have recognized the need that we need to move from a work group to a board with structures such as bylaws, the scoring rubric that I mentioned, and membership. And then really finalizing those guidelines and working with the county council towards those guidelines. And then funding priorities, segmenting requests into clear categories for review, and then identifying a few high visible projects to demonstrate early success with the funds. And then community communication, develop FAQs, publish public forums through browncounty.com, and a web page that could really go through what we've done. Here's what we've done, or here's where we're going. Here's what we've done. You know, look at the progress that we're making, and look at what innkeeper's taxes have been able to provide to you in the community. Key takeaways so far by the work group is we really want to ensure that we're stewarding the innkeeper's tax revenue responsibly. Significant progress has been made with community forums, attorney guidance, and a draft funding model. And the priorities are clear to us: parks, tourism, infrastructure, quality of life, and economic development. And really where we're at is moving from planning and into implementation with the council's partnership and oversight.
Any questions? Comments? Scott Darren and I have been on that board for all its existence, so we're closely involved tracking it. It is in the process of development. Brian's done an excellent job. So, major concern is.
Run off that, Brian, come on. Or do.
We'll stir something up. No, the balance again is to balance it between just tourism benefit and resident benefit. So, and also giving the public acknowledgement of the new tax is not on them, but is in their benefit and in lieu of them having to pay taxes. So, it's a good opportunity.
I was just wondering,
What led to this is, we were trying to get the state to help us out with, some of the expenses. Tourism is a benefit to us. It's also an expense to us, for the services that we have to provide. That all falls on local residents. So we tried to get legislature to do something that helps us with funding for the cost that we incur tourism. And what we got out of the whole legislative session this year was just the ability to raise the innkeeper's tax. So what we're doing is trying to leverage that in the best way possible to benefit, to take some of the burden off of local residents and give us extra funds to be able to expand our infrastructure and create the creative way to take care of the needs that we have in this country. This was
my question is, since the population in the county is older, the schools are already concerned with the drop in population. How is this going to benefit old people like me and Joel and even Gary?
That really falls into that purview of an economic development corporation. And when you hear like an EDC, you might think of a traditional EDC where we're here to recruit a bunch of industry and that kind of thing. But in talking with these experts, a lot of what they have moved their economic development corporation models to is the quality of place, quality of life. And a lot of that comes into focus with workforce prosperity and housing. And what's fortunate for us with tourism as a major industry is that the innkeeper's tax funds can be used for workforce housing. And also too, recognizing that senior housing is also a need and a concern, so that we're able to put some of those funds into gaining that and growing that.
But there again, how is that going to, in my age group, because I would guess that of the 15,000 residents in this county, most of us don't utilize parks like young people do. And I just got my notice from the property tax, how much it went up. So there again, I understand all of that. Except how is that, again, directly, without adding extra things, how is that directly going to help? Because obviously, as far as affordable housing, and my personal opinion is a house that you can afford. And I understand they're trying to attract business here, and I understand the need for tourism. Please don't misunderstand that directive either. But when just like pulling people into work here, how many people are going to make a career here unless you're a business owner? So those people that come and get a wage from one of the local businesses here, even at that, at minimum wage, I'm assuming is basically what it is. Maybe I'm no. They're not going to stay here anyway. It's going to be a short-term thing. So, and what is the price of affordable housing? At minimum wage, what is the most housing you can afford? You see all my points, and I'm not trying to be negative. I'm just trying to point out the realistic conversation for the group that primarily lives in this county. How's it affecting us? Because they're getting the property tax, the services, and I don't know how accurate this is, but I was a while back at one of the emergency management boards, and it was pointed out that I brought this up the last meeting. Someone died because there's not enough ambulance service. See, that's the kind of stuff that affects our age group. So when it's being utilized in the park and whatever, how is that going to help the
I can
citizens
help
of
you
this
with
town?
that. Yeah, I think if you focus on seniors, if that's, I think your question there.
And most people are.
Well, yeah, so there are 4 areas that I would point you to for direct senior benefit. One is ADA accessibility improvements at all of our public parks, and properties and fairgrounds and Pioneer Village.
They get most,
The county park. No, they do. They do. If you don't, you should be. And part of it.
I know you would have to.
Let me finish. If you're not able to walk on those properties, which if you look at those properties right now, if you are a senior, you are probably not feeling safe walking. Okay, number one. ADA improvements, that includes the courthouse, that sidewalk area around the courthouse. There are just some very poor walking conditions at all of our public properties that affect the rest of seniors. This funding can go towards that. 2, we've asked the commissioners to identify $250,000 in funding each year that we can offset for public safety purposes. Okay, that benefits all seniors. The Sycamore Senior Center is located at the county fairgrounds. It's in pretty average condition. That's probably a generous assessment. Funding can go into that facility to improve it, not only just ADA improvements, like I said before, but just the building, its usability as well. But in addition to that, senior programming can come out of this. Like one of the, we got to activate that space, right? Like programs there, the seniors can attend at the public senior center. We've heard examples in these meetings of senior programming that's been highly successful, sold out 2 years in a row through the art gallery. It's a socialization art program. I think at 50 or 100 people sold out, massive positive response. That's one program. And we have very few of those. And the reason for that, and the reason for lack of investment in ADA, in our parks, and our public safety, is because we don't have the money until now. Okay, and so we are looking at those critical investments that have been unmet for decades and trying to make a local difference, not just for seniors, not just for tourism, not just for, business owners, not just for the schools, but just for the community as a whole. And so we've never had access to this type of funding before, let alone no federal or state grants, which is like phenomenal, right? That's huge. We decided for us what's important. And no one else is gonna, with our bureaucratic chain, and make us do something we don't want to do. And so, tons of investments. Those are 4 right off the top of my head. 4 seniors. Let me take something like that. Well, you talked about the benefit to you on this. The purpose of this, that 250,000, 1% of the total of 8% is going back into the county. It's going to offset some of the burden that we right now. We're looking at ways to fund and develop Parks and Rec, fairground, the economic development. The EDC portion of this is designed to bring in younger families. You talk about, you ask what keeps them from coming in working a minimum wage job and leaving. That's what we're hoping to do with this, is give them something to come here and stay here. Younger families with kids.
So how would that,
If we, well, that's what we're working through.
Well, let's talk about producer.
Yeah, we have.
One of the things.
Well, I don't want to get off on that.
That's what we're doing.
The EDC, the goal of that is to give us opportunities to bring families in. If we get, affordable housing for families with young kids to come in, that benefits the schools, that benefits our workforce. We're not just looking at how do we get people in here to work in the towns or the shops. How do we get people in here to start new businesses, to start their home business, to bring families in here to fill the workforce needs that we have, while also giving them the opportunity to build their own business or their own business and stay here. I mean, this is a very complicated issue and something that we have struggled with for decades. And we are just doing everything we can to make this a solution.
so does this money go to the town too? Because the town of Nashville proper, aren't they responsible for the infrastructure like sidewalks?
Absolutely. Yeah, it's a whole, it's Brown County.
So does this money,
Town.
is it utilized for that, for the town as well, or is it just a?
Well, they would be a lead
It's all around county.
funder for that. I mean, the town is under county, obviously, but, and so everybody's eligible if you're in the county, but the town is responsible for all of their infrastructure and all of their assets. They would be the core lead. They could request funding for, say, or provide. Or they could seek grants. This could be used as kind of a matching fund for grants that the town wants.
So they could seek a grant from the us.
No.
Yeah, they
If there's a grant available, you know, public safety down at a state grant that they need, matching funds for, they could seek a grant from this for that. I mean, there's all kinds of ways to leverage this to benefit. And it's, you know, the economic impact of this is intended to take the tax burden off of residents instead of
Allows us to grow our revenue.
So is that subjective, or is that backed up with some facts as far as what you just stated concerning the revenues and all that? Is that a subjective guess, or is that a reality guess that's hard?
No, I mean, the reality, is that 50 students a year, it's several teachers a year, and we've been doing that for some time. We're approaching a point where, in my mind, it's not unlikely that we could lose our district. Okay, and so we've got these real numbers that are not good. Student and teacher retention, the major problem. Apparently, it's a critical priority in our school strategy, but we don't see it changing, right? And so I know our community wants to do something. We talked about it in this meeting yesterday. The group seemed to be aware of that being a problem and that we don't seem to be making progress. And so, you know, that's a real number. If you're looking for data, is student enrollment, teacher retention, but we have to actually do something as a community to change that, or else it's just going to continue. But in terms of your question about, I think it was about economic development, is that?
Yeah, the projected things that the money would be used for, the amount of prosperity as a result of the decisions that you make for the people in the
So
county.
what's the ROI is your question, or
I'm not prepared to that.
return on this?
Okay.
Is that what you're asking? Like, what would be the return?
Yeah, how do we measure that?
How do we measure it?
Yeah, how do you quantify that? How do you do that?
Population growth of families with children. Well, there are lots of ways to do that. That's one of the metrics. And typically it's job growth, wages, assessed value, and like business attraction. That's for like Carmel.
Well, what businesses would we?
We are not Carmel.
Right, I understand that.
We have different metrics that have not been determined yet, but based on our priorities, housing is important. That's what the community is saying, right? There's a problem with housing. That's the key thing we're seeking right now, affordable housing for young families. Yeah, workforce is a problem.
And please define affordable. I hear that term all the time. Define affordable.
Well, let me
housing.
finish the first question first. Housing, workforce, right? Struggling with both. Student, teacher retention, struggling with real numbers right in front of our face, right? We've got population, which is a problem. But I think, the key things are that housing are kind of, lack of economic development activity kind of at all currently. I mean, here's the other thing we've talked about in this group is like we've now got an opportunity in Helmsburg to be helpful to them. Actual capital that we've never had. I mean, that organization has been pulling itself up by the bootstraps for years, right? With what, $6,000? That's all we can scrape off the couch, right? Well, now we can actually provide significant, impactful funding that could do what Helmsburg wants to do. I mean, that's like the next step is, you're kind of ahead here, you're down the road of, hey, what are the outcomes? We haven't even formed an organization yet, haven't even put a group together to that's where we are, unfortunately, is on the floor with these things, and it's not moving until now. And just to notice, something has to change there, in other words. And so you're ahead. Those are things we'll come to, but we can't tell you like all the details right now. We've had months of meetings already. I don't know how many meetings we've had with 12, 15, 20 people, broad stakeholder group for hours. Right? lots of discussion, experts at the table. So, I mean, there's nothing keeping you from attending those. If you want to participate and be a part of that discussion, I'm well listened to them before.
He
can't,
Susan, let's ask. 3 members, non-appointed group. Gary basically selected the group.
There's nothing that says he can't attend.
In the audience.
It's a public meeting, it's advertised, so, I mean, as long as there's not 4 of us sitting at the table making decisions.
We get tripped up a lot on that, Susan. Would you elaborate for everyone's benefit, like that rule? And
Yeah, I mean, right. You have open meetings where public is invited to attend. He's a member of the public and can attend those meetings. He's not planning a certain thing. You're not planning to all meet there together, right? You as the committee are planning. Anybody who's attending as an audience member isn't planning. It's happenstance. It's coincidental. Like, that is not a violation of the open door law. He may or may not attend the meeting. He may attend one and may not attend the next. So it's not a violation.
what would a violation look like in that setting? Just like what's too far? Like if he shows up and all of a sudden we take a vote as a council, that's too far. Right.
You couldn't take a
couldn't
vote
do-
as a council. It's not your meeting.
Right. And so what would be an overstep in that case?
If the 4 of us would step out of the room and have discussion, that would be.
That would be a violation.
Have a discussion about any
Yeah, anything, the 4 of us cannot.
I mean,
Together outside of a public meeting for a discussion.
right. And I'm not even sure what he's imagining the topic would be. But I mean, it's just, right. It's just,
So, okay, so you can come and attend those meetings if you want. I mean, I think you're gonna be amazed if you attend, because it's a very diverse group of leaders from across our community. You know all of them. And they're just having really open, kind of deep conversations about some of the important issues that we've seen happening forever and never been able to fix. And the exciting thing is, like, wow, we actually have a chance to do something seriously impactful here.
So
This is the best discussion group I have ever seen in this county in the 20+ years I've been here, of actually listening and having concern. There's a lot of meetings that happen, get together. There's like, how do we go next? How do we grow that? This has taken the entire county. The residents' concerns, not just, how do we leverage the residents to grow nationally? It's not that at all.
But is this, the meetings, are they more of a tribal following of like minds that want to do exactly the same?
I'm probably the black sheep at home. I'm the one always raising eyebrows. So there's no, everybody agreeing, no group thing, no, that's not, yeah.
The whole way it started,
This is the most effective group I've ever seen.
the way it started was Pam asked to talk to Scott and I, and it grew to this group about the innkeeper's tax, which was going through the legislation. So we opened it up as the council, you might say, to say, what do the people think? What do the stakeholders feel like? What do they care about? And it's worked out excellently, because at first I think they had to back up a little bit, which was fine. It's fine. Usually we go out, we legislate and say, here, live with it. This time we says, no, we want to find out how to use this to the people, to serve all the people involved, the tourists, the innkeepers, and the residents. So it's become a very positive group as far as I can see.
Yeah, what we got from some of the members of the legislature, when we were talking about how to get funding for, half the county, but we can't, their answer to us was, max out, raise your income tax. And the
Well, that's
answer
gotta
is
be
no. My answer
If
is
you want to
no.
raise taxes, let's do nothing else. Really, this is kind of thing we have to do with capital. We don't want to do this, then you're basically saying we're going to raise your taxes because
And-
we can't support current operations without something given here.
And that's the purpose of this, is how do we leverage what we have
And if you look at
and have available to us so we don't have to.
If you look
put
at-
that burden on the residents.
the screen up there, this is the document that Jim sent out yesterday in terms of our current financials. First at the top, you can see a color code, and the third color down there says shift Park and Rec Department to Convention, Visitors and Tourism. What this is showing is that about $200,000 of our budget that we were carrying can now come out of the innkeeper's tax. So that alleviates the tax burden to, like say, seniors or the residents, and can go the other direction. And that was a progression. Originally, we thought we could just take some of the functional things out of there, but then as our discussions came about, we realized salaries can go in there too. And that's what we're looking at now. We're not totally sure of that, but we believe that can be a possibility.
Susan, I'd ask for a review of the last year's state legislative changes on the keeper's tax. I don't know if you've had a chance to look at that yet, but in the meantime, we've heard that there were changes as to how we can move money out of the general fund. And so I need to know that, and pretty soon.
It's HCA 14.7.
Because others
Yeah.
have found it and we don't know.
You can't move innkeeper's dollars into the general fund. They have to stay in your innkeeper's funds.
Well, this is new legislation for this year, but yeah. Could you get that to us? Like, I mean, it went into effect July 1, but passed January 1. And we're like, we're here. So
I've got
so
I think Judy had a question.
No.
Oh,
Yeah, okay.
thank you. Good timing. Thank you.
Oh, okay.
You need one? So anyway, I just want to make sure, the reason I wanted you to answer that.
Okay. Okay, that's fine.
And so, and they do report it.
Thanks, Des.
That's how we.
Yeah, that's not new. You can't move it. Like,
Brian,
we're not talking about
Brian.
taking it.
Do you have an extra copy of that? Uh-huh. Yeah, okay, great, thank you.
That's the new portion.
Right, yep, nope, that's exactly what I just said.
Yeah, can't move it around.
Right. It's just you budget.
You got one?
Yeah, I found the code, but that's one.
Yeah.
Don't run off, Brian. Hopefully we're about done. Any other questions? It's a work in progress, but it is showing up as a real opportunity for Brown County to flourish, if you want to call it that, rather than just scrape by. As Darren was saying about health. And you guys being awesome and novel also. Any other questions?
Did that answer your question, Patrick?
Yeah.
Plus Patrick, you got pickleball courts.
Yeah, well, and I appreciate you saying you should use that, but the reality is, because my group is older folks, and we're pretty social in the county, except for pickleball courts, most of them don't utilize it. And beginning about now, most of us don't come downtown. And I get that, that's the busy season, that's part of living here. Totally get that, totally see the need for that, totally understand that.
Yeah, my big thing was the outlying areas of the county that seem to get ignored or the burden placed on them. I know, talking to people in my, northwestern section of the county, specifically in the southern part of the county, I mean, there are residents who haven't been to Nashville itself in a decade now.
True, I agree with that.
Yeah.
And they always seem to be saddled, burdened with the cost of upkeep of Nashville, and there's
Yeah.
tensions that now between town, the residents of the town and the residents.
You understand my point.
I very much so. I've been, I've been saying that.
I think we all live way out.
Yeah, I was
I do
talking
too.
to my neighbors.
Somebody comes in and says something, it's like, what programs can we create in Nashville? Can't help.
Exactly.
And programs created in Nashville aren't helping the people, in Fruitdale, who are driving to Greenwood or Martinsville or Greenwood for work. Never get done. That's what we're trying to do is how do we use this to lessen the burden on county
Because
residents?
I think younger folks, and I would consider you younger folks, have a misunderstanding of our age group and what we desire. For the most part, people our age group, I'm still pretty active, but most people my age group are not. And I understand you need schools, but most of us literally don't care. We just always sees our property tax go up. So when these folks, and I hear that conversation with everybody, in my socioeconomic group, even if they're not poor, they're like, our property tax went up several $100s this year. And that, if you're on a fixed income, that's a desire. So I think that gets kicked over to the side with a little bit of, for lack of vernacular here, fluff. That, well, we're doing this and we're doing this. But the bottom line for my age group is cost to live here. And we're really sheltered. Maybe that's not good. We're literally, even though we say that we're concerned about our age group, they're really not, because there's always these rebuttals with why we need to do this and need to do this and need to do this. And I look at it, and I do represent the people literally in my age group where I live. We look at it, it's just all for the town. You said that, and I agree. And we should have a nice town. I understand all of that stuff because I came from Indianapolis. Believe me, this is a blessing. True. But the same token, you talk about affordable housing. How many elderly folks are you going to push out of Brown County because they can't afford to live? That will end up because they instead of in the Brown County nursing home, they get pushed to another county. They get pushed away from where they live. Those are the considerations that you don't really look at and you don't really think of, because how could you? Just like you might not be that concerned about that. And the state on the other end of that, we're not concerned about those other things that we're discussing here. And I understand we need all of it.
If you look at the housing back behind the YMCA and such, it's 50+ housing. They say demographically a lot of the people who couldn't maintain their property out there are now living in housing of that nature. So we have provided for them to stay in Brown County. Now, the other thing this would provide is those people can get to town without risking their life on 46 is hopefully what we're going to try and facilitate with some of this tax money. So it's a benefit to them.
And how would you facilitate that? Doing
Paths, not instead of the path going back, either make an overpass or something or another to make it. Right now, you got to walk up the street on 46.
Jerry, no overpass.
Right, that's fine. That's fine. I'm just saying, create something. I'm not going to push it. Whatever.
Inevitably, more housing can increase the overall tax base in Brown County and allow us to grow out of some of the financial issues that the county is facing.
And that directly reduces individuals' property tax, because what we have right now, our levy is spread out over the county, and however many houses are, that's how it's divided up. We add more houses, the levy doesn't increase, the levy stays the same, but the number of houses that is divided up amongst is more, so the burden on each individual property is less. So that
I can't sit silent on that statement.
okay.
I absolutely object to that false narrative. The false narrative is simply this: we want to increase housing to reduce the tax burden of those of us that live here. The underlying assumption is government will keep a lid on their expenses, and it's that assumption that's completely false. You give this council money, you give Brown County, another $5 million in tax revenue, guaranteed they'll find a way to spend it. Okay, and currently when I hear the statement that, well, we got to raise taxes, we're already at the max levy on property tax. We can't increase it.
You can't income tax. That's what the legislature is saying that you do.
All right, you go down that road, and you and I are going to have a huge
That's what
amount.
they're saying.
First of all,
We are already,
none of us, we say we're not going to do that.
we are already over 2.5%.
I'm trying to avoid that.
Okay, I think the state of Indiana income tax is around 3, something like that.
3.5 now.
I don't want to know
So-
why that can go up too, because I don't want to raise the income.
Yeah. So, and when I say this, first of all, to address your statement about us old people.
Yeah.
Okay, keep in mind, we'll be dead 25 years. Youngest baby boomer was born in 64. So you know what? The issue for me is if I look over the next 25 years, 2050, right? And we look at this progress, where are we headed? And I guess my concern for the county as a whole, I don't care if it's already dead. But my concern for the county is this issue of gentrification. And when I look at 319 square miles, we are the greenest little blocks in the state of Indiana. We're set smack dab in the middle of 500,000 people. All right. And I think what's going on is, and it's not, keep in mind, I am a free market capitalist who believes in property rights. And I also operate off the assumption that human beings, for the most part, will always act in their own self-interest. All right. So I applaud the private sector. The private sector is going to do what they've got to do. Keep your occupancy rate out, cash flow, stay in the black, and make a profit. But this, with a $362 million GDP, which is what the GDP of Brown County is, and keep in mind the surrounding 5 counties, that's 29 billion. Bartholomew County ranks number 6 in GDP per capita in the state of Indiana. It actually exceeds Monroe and Johnson. My concern for the county is that I think what's happened is that, the CVB and the marketing with the music center and this tourism piece, right? That people outside of the county, take East Chicago, the region, well, the people in the region can easily, I don't know what their homes are worth, but I guarantee you they're a heck of a lot more expensive than are down here. So my concern for the county long term is, as people realize what a gem this county is, and I can come in and unload my house in Chicago, drop down here, pick up a parcel for 300,000 or 400,000, build another $500,000 house. I think my concern is for the county. If we're not careful, the county could turn potentially into a very transient community. All right, where the bulk of the property owners are those that reside in Florida, claim their residency in Florida, and they live here in the summer. If that's what the county wants, and they want to become a transient community, then fine. But to me, there needs to be some balance there. And what's the in the name of progress? Where do we find that balance? And to me, based on my value system, I would like to see us, have more residential homeowners who live here. They may work outside the county, that's fine, but they live here and they call Brown County home because then they got some skin in the game. The problem I have with those outside of the county that have second homes here, so they don't really have any skin in the game. They're here for a few months and then they're gone. And one of the areas, you take White County. I lived in White County for 4 years. You take a look at White County, is about 25,000 people approximately. And you get the town of Monticello, you got Lake Shafer, you got Lake Free Creek. But the summer months, Memorial Weekend to Labor Day, there's oil tags everywhere. And that whole north end of, between Monticello and Mona on Lake Shafer, the population takes a huge increase. There's a lot of people that set homes.
You don't even have to go outside Brown County to make that right. Look, it's Sweetwater and Portrait.
Yeah, well, there you go.
So I mean, and I would argue that since COVID, you've had that exact scenario happen where people from Chicago are moving in. Broadband access has gotten so much better. So
yes, I just, how do we preserve? We've got generations. This county, as long as this county's here, it's just generation.
Oh, yeah, no kidding.
And what's that obviously is an issue with the school system. So just as you guys talk and discuss, I guess what do we value about living in Brown County? And what are we going to leave behind for the stewardship?
So the other thing to keep in mind, Patrick, especially for seniors, is this entire funding pool doesn't require a single penny from any property owners at all. Like not one single penny will come from one single senior, essentially, out of this fund, right? And so also, Darren mentioned the tax relief that will be going to really all residents, but includes seniors, in the form of this $250,000 offset of expenses out of the general fund public safety person, correct, fairgrounds that can now go to public safety. And so just keep in mind, don't be confused. This is some kind of tax fund that our residents pay for. It's not. It's coming from others and benefiting locals.
And two other points that you said, that I don't like the term affordable housing. Affordable housing is, affordable is subjective. It's what's affordable for you is not, may not be affordable for me. It's a term that people throw around. I hate the fact that I don't use it, but, I mean, housing, residential housing for local residents and, you know, young families, that's what's important.
The innkeepers don't talk about his workforce housing.
Yeah, and say workforce for food here,
That's my point.
People that will care for seniors.
hold on, and another point as to what you're talking about with concern for the county. This group, I commend this group that's come together because they have taken that into consideration in their group that I've ever heard in Florida. So it's a concern that's being addressed.
One more example is they talked about emphasis on the fairgrounds, which sits dormant for most of the time, and we may just have opportunity to develop that for more senior activities. And along with that, as I mentioned, creating more of a path from the fairgrounds to town without having to walk on the road. These are things that serve tourists and residents.
But there again, I don't really honestly see that, Gary, because as stated, most of the people that live here don't come downtown.
Let me ask you this.
Yeah.
What is it outside of public safety? You, people in your demographic, your neighborhood, you.
Property tax, and I understand the whole scenario, so you don't have to explain it to me. I get it. I understand how it all works. But that's what it is. And when we have these school referendums to save a failing school system because there's not enough population, out of my control. It goes right back to what Jim's talking about. Everybody push. Well, they have a referendum. The next thing you know, there goes our property tax again. That is the big push for my constituents where I live, and none of that seems to affect that. All we see is every year or 2 years, our property tax gets dinged up again and again and again.
What do we actually do?
Well, that's what we're here for.
And that's what we're trying to do here. And so we need your input. You have ideas on what we can actually do.
Well, I'm relatively, to be honest, like Jim always says, I don't know what I don't know because I'm doing this. But I do have enough of a business background to see that the older age group, none of it basically is geared towards them. It's not geared toward their welfare and their benefit. Just like, and I understand the roads have nothing to do with this, but the roads in Brown County are atrocious. But I understand these are two separate issues, but those are the things that my group's concerned about. Property taxes, roads, those kinds of things, those kinds of services. But all we hear, and my group always talks about this, well, the roads don't get done, we don't have ambulance service, we don't have police service. And I know for a fact, there's not that many deputies. In fairness, sometimes there's 1 or 2 deputies in the county, depending on what happens. And anyway, Gary, so public safety, I've walked out of my house before and backed up a deputy myself, that they didn't even know who I was, that I had done all of this, just because I was concerned for their safety. So all of this plays together, but we can make all of these excuses as to, or all of these replies as to, well, we're doing this and this and this. Bottom line is, and I'm talking about the bottom line. No one, like Jim has said before too, I hate quoting, somebody define affordable housing. And I don't just mean what we've said today. Define it. I want it written down. What is affordable housing? I hear that from other people, especially.
Here's what it is. It's real simple. It's 30% or less of your income goes towards your mortgage.
Okay. So, but there again, who can,
does that help though?
no, not at all, because I'm not stupid.
That's what it is.
Well, no, it's not. So when you build houses and you get contractors to come in here, what is it, 500,000?
It's probably around 250 or less on target. We don't know if we can make it.
Well, I understand that.
Depends on how much.
But then again, now we get into Section 8, we get into all of these things. So what kind of citizen are we attracting? We can make all of these defenses, but the reality, the bottom line is, it's thrown around. We put up all of these blockages as to, just like I'm saying, define what's an affordable house for the average.
Or less.
Okay, so what person that can afford a $250,000 house is going to work in Bloomington, come here? They're not going to do that. You can't afford to.
Well,
do
there
that.
are teachers and deputies right now that can't afford to live here, and they can't find $250,000, and that would be affordable to them.
Well, but maybe they
That's a
can,
reference for them.
they should.
I think 6 of our deputies live out of county.
Well, that, and you know what, that's commonplace in the state. Let me finish it. That's commonplace in the state of Indiana. You can live as long as.
Not for us, our housing price is really high here.
And that's what I'm saying, you can live well outside of the county, you can do that.
You can,
Yes.
so we don't collect any income.
Let me ask a question back to what you were describing before the litany of things you read off. Are those Indianapolis values or Brown County?
See, there again, now, Gary, now,
Well,
you're being diminutive of my thought.
I am not
And you're trying to put it
diminutive.
in my
I am
place,
asking.
and that's not gonna happen.
I got roads.
That is not gonna happen.
I got roads.
So don't throw those kind of things into my face.
No, I'm not
throwing
afraid. Just asking.
And I'm telling you, it has nothing to do with this conversation, other than to try and control my thoughts and control what I'm saying. That's all the reason you stated that.
I am
No,
seeking
I'm saying
understanding.
the facts are simple. Define affordable housing, define what it costs to live here, quit spending taxpayers' money and wasting it. That's why we were elected. And I'm not saying we shouldn't do some of these things, so don't think I'm totally negative. I'm just saying, no one wants to still recognize, you just keep coming up with all this stuff as to why the senior citizen in this county is struggling when we do everything else. And I'm just talking about quality of life for senior citizens. And that main one that I would see is keeping our property tax down, and I understand what you said, Scott. I'm not totally stupid. I understand what that means. So, but, and you can shake your head all you
I know
want.
what you mean. I don't know what you mean. I don't know what you mean.
Okay,
So,
well,
I'm confused. Maybe I
maybe you are.
don't know which issue you're talking about.
Well, affordable living instead of affordable housing, for the people like Jim's just talked about that need to live here and keep a base of people live here, like Darren's family's from here, I'm assuming yours. We're gonna have to make this a place for them to live, or it's gonna be a transient community. That's what it's
Patrick,
gonna be.
you're preaching to the choir, bud. I hate to
Well,
tell you
then why
that.
are we discussing
We're trying to
the?
do something about that, is what we're trying to do. Okay, and we had worked for hours.
Okay, but how,
Scott, so I mean, I hear what you're saying. I think we all agree. We're trying to fix it.
Right.
That's
Affordable housing issue. I have been listening to this since 2017. Okay, 2017. And it's just a broken record, a circular conversation. It's going on and on and on and on. Right?
Yeah.
And right now, you know, everybody all want affordable housing. You better cross your fingers and pray. All right, that Clint Studebaker and Brown County Regional Sewer District get the $45 million that they need, okay, to put in a 13-mile collection system from Woodland Lake all the way through Bleeding Blossom, all the way to Lake Lemon. Now, if they get the funding, which is underscore if, all right, then I would recommend all of you get with Helmsburg, start taking a hard look at State Road 45, and the real estate north and south are there, right? And find out how much real estate is there. And then the big obstacle with this affordable housing subject is when you find a 50-acre parcel that's not in the floodplain, and you don't have to go in and bulldoze a bunch of trees off of it. You want to go in and put 200 homes on a 50-acre parcel. The people in this county have an absolute uproar because nobody in this county will support any sort of planned development. And until you overcome that issue there, then you're never going to be able to move towards adding additional housing. And it is what it is.
There's probably like 2 50-acre parcels in that area.
Well,
They're not for sale, so it's not really.
Well,
Yeah.
but, you know, and so, you know, I've spent hours on this because, you know, I've got that obsessive compulsive disorder. You know, and to me, I would highly recommend that, you know, there be a team of people and working with the GIS to really try to identify where is the real estate in the county to where you can build homes, because we don't have enough real estate to where everybody has a 3-acre parcel. I mean, it's just not gonna happen. And so if you want to really increase that, because I mean, look at it this way. If you Google or use AI, the average per person per household in the US, I think, is 2.5 people. Okay. So if you wanted to increase the population of the county from 15.5 to 16.5, do the math. How many homes do you have to build? Well, if you have to build 1,000 homes, where are you gonna put them? All right. So if we're gonna have this conversation, then let's be objective, let's be fact-based, let's be rational in thinking.
you know, and they're gonna have to take it out 25 years, because it's not gonna happen.
I think an economic development corporation would assist or could assist.
Yeah,
something like that.
Sure, yeah, absolutely, yeah, because the issue is intellectual capital, have the actual people that, you know, have the skill sets that are required to be able to go in and do the research, and there's quite a bit of research, that has to be the first things first.
Totally agree.
And then from there, you've got to get into the infrastructure to have that infrastructure to support that. You know, and then lastly, you get into the planning and zoning, and you get into the mindset of the community. You know, for example, there's a road, Poplar Grove Road, just, I guess, whatever. Anyway, it's just a couple, 2-3 miles from me, big open, wide open field. Perfect place. You could go there and put a lot of nice.
So farm field, Jim, they don't want to take.
It is a farm field.
They want to take farmland.
Well, then you keep.
You mentioned two things. You mentioned two things that this group is working on that we actually have funding for, which is infrastructure and economic development. That is exactly what this group is doing. I mean, we've never been able to do those things or fund those things with this type of capital because we've never had it.
Okay, first of all, you don't have that much money. You got about 2.3 million a year coming in 27 and 28. Okay,
How much do you need?
first of all, and secondly, this innkeeper's tax revenue is not going to save the county from hitting the wall. Okay, bottom line. All right, because the
Yeah, that's
reality.
not what we're doing here.
It's not there.
That's not.
I said that
He's trying.
Nation. It's the infrastructure is antiquated.
Yeah.
You can't even get water up past my house. The lines just break and it looks like Niagara Falls coming down the highway.
I've been told in Nashville for every gallon they sell, they have to buy 2 gallons of water, something like that, 2.4 gallons.
Did you want to say something, Pam? Are you done?
Well, I was previous to Brian's comment, it was like, what Jim is saying is exactly why we need an EDC, one of many reasons. An EDC has never, we are so far behind the eight ball with economic development. And this is not factories and all that. This is sustainable small communities that require, and I've said this so many times, but the more times a dollar changes hands inside the community is a huge measure of the prosperity level of that community. How many times do you leave Brown County to go buy something? You buy in Brown County. We don't have the baseline infrastructure to support being able to buy local recently. And until we take a big look at the groundwork of economic development, we're all going to be spending our money outside the county for the bulk of our purchases. So having things more localized. Imagine what Helensburgh was like 100 years ago, maybe 75 or 80 years ago. Everybody bought from Helensburgh. There were some people, I remember a fellow was name. But anyway, he got on the bus to head out for his assignment World War II. And they picked up a couple fellas from Helensburgh, and one of them had never been outside of Helensburgh. I mean, I'm not advocating for that, but I'm saying that those are, you know, that the close-knit are so important for our county, whether it's Nashville, Bing Blossom, Helensburgh, Novo, you know, all of it rises together. And for me, my biggest hope with economic development is for the next generation and the next generation. And if we don't start thinking about us in terms of longevity, then we're going to be in this short-sighted, narrow-minded, always responding to chaos and crisis. And until we start expanding our thought processes and understanding that for me to prosper requires my neighbor prospers too. When we get that mindset and we're off of the races, and now we have funding, potential funding to make that happen.
I have a question, and it doesn't actually, I have a question. Culture. In the last 32 months, keep in mind, I didn't move to the county until 08, right? And I have lived in 11 other counties in the state of Indiana, so I have respect. And one of the advantages that I have
get involved in the county in 2017 is I don't have a historic perspective. So I don't have any biases or, anything like that, because I just don't have a historic perspective. So every time I see something, it's new, right? One of the observations is it appears, and I could be completely wrong, but it appears that every time we have a disagreement within the leadership of the county, it's always win-lose. And everybody backs off in their corner, and then they make it personal, and then it becomes vindictive. And I don't know how we change that. I don't know how we move from win-lose to win-win or no deal. And move to where it's a continuous improvement mindset.
That's exactly what this group is.
So that's what, but I'm talking about, not your group, I'm talking about the culture of us as a county. Because one of the issues is that, to me, one of the big things, there's several, but I've lived all over the state, and predominantly in the first quarter of my life, it was Northern Indiana. And I'm of the opinion that if you're going to live in Indiana, it really doesn't get any better than where we live. And my basis for that, it's not the Houston National Forest, or anything like that. It's the basis for it is my office is in Columbus. If I need to go to Walmart on a weekend, I'm going to Seymour because it's a great drive. And if I really want to get out of town, then I can leave my house, tool through the state park, and go to Bloomington. It's about 45 minutes. And if I really wanted, which I don't, but if I really wanted to go to Indy, right, or Greenwood, or Southmore, it's a 30-minute to 45-minute drive. So the location of this county, it's like the people who live in Wellington within it. I mean, for goodness sakes, you guys, could be up. How long does it take you to get to Greenwood?
Okay. 25 minutes.
Yeah, so you can go
15 minutes to lunch.
You can go from a feeling of complete, serenity in this privacy, this space, to all of a sudden in 20, 30 minutes, you can be, have access to everything you can have access. So to me, that's a huge value of us as a community. And I guess my point is that, how can we shift the culture of the county to where we can move towards a continuous improvement model, think win-win or no deal, not become vindictive when we don't get our own way and go off in our corners and start fighting and pointing fingers at each other. Because that's my experience over the last 8 years. There's been a lot of that that goes on.
Well, based on our discussion yesterday, you mentioned that we're intellectual humility.
Yeah.
And that's what you need out here. My biggest observation in being in politics is the biggest problem is egos.
Yeah.
Somebody's going to come in and inject their ego, say, I got to feel important. I got to do this. I don't really care about the people. It's a matter of, I've got to validate myself or whatever. We talked about this before, the vet being above the line. We're not here to push our personal agendas, our power trips, any of that stuff. We're here to learn what really needs to be done and be intellectually humble enough to say, even if I don't get credit for this or that or whatever, we're going to do it. Boom. That's what we got to do. Let's keep it that way. Or get to that point. Let's put it that way.
So what can we do? If you don't know, that's fine. Just say, I don't know.
First thing that comes to mind is to pray.
Fair.
Humble yourself.
Right.
And pray. And that's my personal thing right there.
So faith.
And faith and believing that we can do better. And not having this, an optimistic mindset. My position is when there's a problem, there is a solution. And we can find that solution together. Everybody has a piece of that solution. And we can find it. So that this budget is not impossible. This can be fixed. And together we can figure out how to get that fixed so that we're not responding in chaos and crisis mode. We don't get upended when there's an unforeseen event that happens. It's I guess that's.
Thanks.
Yeah, it's the American dream and what it takes to do it. Another factor I've learned is there are no solutions. There are just compromises. And am I willing to compromise to move it forward? I'm not gonna get everything I want. But am I big enough to say, okay, fine, let's all do it. Let's all move forward together. We had a meeting the other day with the department heads, and some of the issue was, can we share from different departments? That wasn't the culture. But they didn't want to share from different departments if somebody's shorthanded. I'm thinking, are we not all in this together? Apparently we're not. So we have to set the vision, the policy, the process, the procedures to move, to go proactive instead of the crisis and chaos and whatever comes up, we're gonna deal with it with a personality or some other means rather than proper government procedures. So that's where we're going.
The one last thing that I'm gonna add, based on this last 32 months of discovery, personal, professional opinion. Speak, county government, we don't have a revenue issue, we have an expense problem. Okay, and we don't have a budget problem, we have a lack of policy. And what, and I learned this from my experience on the RMC, is that you have the hopefully not coming across as preaching, just share it. There's the Pareto, the 80-20 rule. And in this county, I Googled for it, but I pulled the 990s long enough. I think there's probably a couple hundred. And so we have a lot of people sitting on boards. And the challenge with those boards is that a lot of people have different reasons for wanting to be, what's the reason for wanting to be on council? Why do we get involved? And, one of the concerns I have is that we have, with that 80-20 rule, if you got a board of 5, and you got 4 passive people that are there because they just kind of want to be involved, you can have them kind of know what's going on. And then you end up with a person like me on that board. Okay, I come in, get involved in something, do it, get it done, and move on to the next, and we feel like we've got a sense of accomplishment, right? And what happens though in that process is you got a board of 5, you have 4 in kind of 3 or 4 inactive members. They show up to meetings, but they don't contribute. And then you got 1.5 people that pretty much drive everything. Then what we end up with is tribal knowledge. And tribal knowledge is where, if you're in a factory and you got a problem, you get a bot. This bot knows how to fix it. Factories got 500 people, and there's only one Bob, and Bob knows how to fix it. Nothing's documented anywhere. And so what I've discovered is we lack we as a council, we don't have a policy for stuffing. We don't have a policy. We don't even have a policy for how we calculate longevity. Because, the county pays $100 for every year that a person is an employee. Well, is that fractional or is that calendar year? We have no policy on that. And everywhere I look we have no documentation. Well, then don't make that claim, go find the policy, bring it to me, go out of the recorder's office, bring it to me, show me the document. So and so what happens is if we don't have documented policy, then what we end up with are these tribal leaders that everybody's in their silo. Everybody's, they want what they want and they're competing against this over here. And I think the core that causes issues within our relationships with one another and with us as a community. And that is why I called you. And when I looked at the CDC budget, and I looked at the budget, and I asked myself, how, nothing's good or bad in life until you compare it to the alternative. So I'm looking at the budget from CDC, and I'm simply asking the question, how do I make a decision as to whether this is good or bad? And that led to the next question as well, where's the government? I assumed that the CDC had a government document, right? And then I discovered, no, there's no government document, there's no policy. But it's not just the CDC, it's the county council. Wasn't Brown County incorporated in 1836, I think. Do you realize the county's 187 years old and the county council doesn't have a governing document of how we're supposed to conduct ourselves and do business? That's 187 years. So we've had 187 years and in the last 100, nobody did that. Why? Do they not do it and don't want policy because no one wants to be held accountable?
We need a cell phone policy, by the way.
So to me, it's my perspective. Whether that perspective is accurate, whether it has maybe I'm just completely,
I think there are some policies, but you got some holes we need to plug.
well, yes, to me, it's a call. First of all, it's the culture, right? What do we value? What are our core principles? How do we hold each other accountable, right?
Actually, it falls down to the pitfalls of government. We are a government.
Hold
on, I know. Just let me finish this. I think I'm gonna get to your point. We actually do have a governing document. It's the Indiana Code that lays out don't shake your head and dismiss what I'm saying.
Keep it above the line. Keep it above. We're trying to listen. Trying to be open. There's
The problem, I'm going to point out what the problem is with the organization. We have a governing document. It's the Indiana Code that lays out the structure and operation of the county council. That's our governing document. We can create all the procedures we want. We have policies and procedures for the stuff you're talking about. The problem is a council can completely change its makeup in 10 years. So stuff that was there, hold on, let me finish. What a policy that was created 10 years ago has gotten lost because nobody, or because we have people who've come on who are to completely disregard. We can create we can create the perfect policies and procedures today. In 10 years, it can be completely ignored.
Okay.
That's what we're on.
So number one, your assumption is that the General Assembly and these goofball state statutes that they write, okay, which is nuts, because the state statutes is a problem in and of itself.
Oh, I fully agree. I'm not saying it's a perfect situation. That's what we have.
Just as a disclosure, I sent a 2-page document out to Dave Hall and Eric Cook, got a voicemail from Eric Cook, because I've got the state statutes. Okay, and I looked at, I'm dealing with state statutes. The problem with state statutes is this legislative, the legislative or the special legislative agency that writes statutes.
Services,
What is it?
legislative services.
Yeah, these goofballs, okay, write it in a language that it's left up to interpretation. It's about as broad as you can be. All right, and I think they intentionally do that because they can drive revenue.
I know the
So there's issues with the state of Indiana. We're out of the gate.
Right.
Because they're not even close to being perfect. There isn't perfect. Okay. Number two, why did I and Joel and Patrick, when we took our oath, where's the binder? How come we didn't get a binder, okay, that lays out the policy of how, role and responsibilities of council member, how we conduct our meetings, how many meetings we have, that maps out the 12-month cycle. I never received anything like that.
Well, the closest you get is the AIC
Okay.
group.
Yeah,
We
you
talked to them, they didn't want to get more specific.
Okay,
either.
so
They want to keep it in budget or realities.
Yeah, so what I'm asking us to bring, and if y'all don't want to do it, that's
I'm
fine.
not saying I don't want to do it. I'm just saying go into it.
I'm doing my discovery. I'm just sharing with you where I'm at currently right now is it's a policy issue. And until that changes, nothing is going to happen. And you're going to continue to just do the same thing over and over and over again.
You sound like I disagree with you. I don't.
No, I'm not.
I absolutely agree with what you're saying.
All right, well,
I'm just saying, if we do that, we have to go into it knowing that
it's a lot of work.
we may be.
It's enormous. It's
Well,
enormous.
you gotta get buy-in.
And it may be completely
There.
disregarded.
Buy-in.
Maybe completely disregarded in 10 years.
Yeah, people actually have to buy into it.
Well, furthermore, Darren, it's an enormous amount of work.
Yeah, I know.
It's enormous. It's hours and hours and hours and hours, right? So to me, if I'm an alcoholic, okay, which by definition I am, I'm a binge-alcoholic. All right, I can go for months and years on end if I start drinking Jim Beam. There's a place right there. 4 months on my 4th cup of gin. But first things first is I have to accept and acknowledge that I have a problem. Right. And unless we as a county and we as leadership within the county acknowledge that, okay, we got an issue, right? Then we can't go forward to try to deal with it and address it.
That's where you guys define a problem.
What we have as a way to do that is to conduct ourselves as a body in such a way that we set the standard that the residents of the county see us as setting a good standard, and hopefully the residents, when they go to vote, will uphold that with people in the future who will want to do when we set an example for, or better.
Correct. That's a very good point, because the culture, as you use the term, is set from the top on down. If we say one thing but do another, they're gonna do what we do. So we have to lead by example, and therefore if we get our act together, they'll be more likely to get their act.
Let me give you a look, Judy, at the last council meeting, the special session meeting. And I agree with her wholeheartedly. Brought up the issue of having activity reports where then a couple times a year, the departments will come in, you know. But if we're gonna do that, you know, or if we're gonna go over here and ask the CDC or the CDC and try to hold them accountable, first things first is we need to hold ourselves accountable, period. And until we do that, we don't have a right to ask and try to hold anybody else accountable.
There's two things I hate, that's liars and hypocrites.
Yes. So I just, you know, I'm saying my piece.
I want to make sure I get your thoughts there on the senior perspective. Affordable housing, defined, dealt with, understood, making sure we're not like incentivizing second homes.
Yep.
The people are not expensive, and that's, we're all there. That's cost of living for seniors is a problem too. And so to the extent that innkeepers tax dollars could go like this public safety offset other ways towards offsetting costs of living for seniors, that's good. Infrastructure is important and economic development is important.
Okay.
Okay. We've already talked for a long time about.
But I also agree with her. I agree with the fact that, you know, everybody talks about having a business, say, you know, except for JC's, where else can you go and do anything here as far as daily living activities, not coming down here to shopping or going to a coffee shop or whatever. But every time someone tries to propose a business, and I don't want it industrialized either, there's always this pushback, Judy stated, and I've lived here since 2007, and I see that. There's always that pushback. Everybody has these grandiose ideas, but the minute someone wants to do something, nobody is behind it. Oh, we can't change this, we can't change that. So until we do what she said, and my interpretation of what you said, until there are things locally where you can bring from the people that live here tax revenue from buying things, that would go a long way, I would think. And don't get me wrong, I'm not suggesting this, but I'm just saying if they had a business here that generated revenue like Walmart, because that's where most all of us go, or Sam's Club, it's all going outside the city because we all have to eat, we all have to buy things, and that's where we're at. We have two businesses, basically, I would, from my own perspective, are major, and that's JC's and Verifware, pretty much it. Yeah. Or, I mean,
Can I bring one other thing? So we got what you're thinking. I think our group is hearing, we've already hit 3 out of 4. So cost of living for seniors is something that is, it's an indirect thing that we would have.
It's just property
of our
tax.
assessments.
Yeah.
That's the only variable for us. is property
Well,
tax.
And that's
it's-
going to be one of the benefits of this.
It is. And so all the investments, the fairgrounds, parks, those would come out of tax dollars in addition to the 200.
But that doesn't affect your senior citizen activities of daily living. That's not ADS.
Here's the problem, and ADS, we're gonna get into. The problem is, we can't solve all of those problems.
Exactly,
With
but
this one fund.
we can't diminish them either.
Yeah,
So there's
we'll
the same,
focus on
there's every bit as importance as everything else here.
Yeah.
But the senior citizen historically everywhere, not just here, is from my view, my perspective, I'm one of the lucky ones. I have enough retirement that I so far can absorb everything, but most can't. Most can't do that.
Agreed, and we talked a lot, if you listen to our meetings about seniors, senior programming, senior Sycamore Senior Center, you know, doing things out in the county so people can out in the county experience quality of life improvements with, I mean, you may not have grandchildren here, but a ton of seniors do.
Right.
People-
Well, they've been,
We
just
want,
because
but they visit and they live here and we want them to stay here so they can take care of our seniors, whether by a family member or what. Right? So we are talking about all of those things. If you listen to our meetings, I mean, you're talking our language. When I say you're preaching to the choir, like these are exactly the kinds of things we're talking about, trying to solve, not as problems. We're looking at solutions, right? Because we actually have some financial capacity now to do it.
But that is one group, in my opinion, yeah, because I'm familiar with it being a home person,
Mhm.
is the one thing that's overlooked. It's set aside. It's
Yeah.
all about the younger folks and the shop owners, for lack of a better.
We got Hickory Ridge too. And
I think a lot of seniors there want the ability to have their kids and their kids actually to live here. I mean,
And the reason I ran for county council is I want to keep a lid on the county expenses because I don't want to drive up the income tax and the property tax. And the issue isn't for me. I'm a widower and I have one daughter who I love dearly. And when I'm dead, she takes over the 15-acre horse farm. And my fear and concern for her is in 25 years from now, that Megan cannot afford to keep the property because the cost, it just escalates out because we don't keep a lid on the government expenses.
Thanks for
So that is my, yes.
We absolutely need both. We need fiscal control and we need growth. They have to work
Right.
together, side by side.
Right.
So I would encourage you to keep going, encourage the whole council to use both approaches. We've got to be responsible and we do have to grow.
But keep in mind, the primary first state statute, the primary responsibility of the county council is fiscal policy. That's it. I mean, we're here today, it's like at 30, it's 10:30, okay? And, you know, counting's okay for 26, 27, 28, 29, 30, anybody's guess. And I'm gonna say one last thing and I'm done. Those of you CDC, CDB, economic development people, I just want to say this because I remember it. Back in 17, 18, and 19, when I was working with Helmsburg, and if the regional sewer district, if they're able to get that collection system installed, I don't know if this is true, but we discussed at length that there's an opportunity in Helmsburg to where could we attract and develop Helmsburg in a way to where we attract artists from outside of the state to want to come and live in that community. And then the purpose is they would develop and do their artisan thing. Okay. But then what I don't know is if you look at all the retail shops within Nashville, that how much of that stuff is we create here versus we import it from wherever. Because I've been told, and again, I don't know if this is true or not, but at one point in time in the history of the community, we had a lot of artists here. And when you went to the shops, this was original work that you couldn't buy on Amazon or anything else. So we all agreed that kind of love that concept of how do we reinvent ourselves to where our shops in Nashville, it's where you go get original work. Because if you're buying original work, you know, premiums for the original work could go potentially go to the ceiling. So we discussed that at length. I think there's an opportunity out there. So I just want to share that.
So in addition to what Jim was saying, we have a spending problem in the county. This group is responsible for approving our county's budget. You're about to see this group, people that are saying there's a spending problem, review these expenses and hopefully cut.
Yeah, just very quick, whereas there was a concern about the response time of public services, of emergency services, ambulances, fire departments. And I heard that, but I didn't hear it in this. I just want to make sure that got included. And again, I'm sure you heard it.
Well, Patrick, were you, I mean, in terms of I guess you kind of glossed over that. We all know that's an issue. We talked about it, but is that a senior crime?
Absolutely.
As opposed to,
And we've already got it.
Most of the
Yeah.
ambulances then probably even police, you know?
We gotta remember though, our,
And the
innkeeper's tax, I mean, the state legislature.
No,
said
I
you
get
can't-
it.
Well, say we found a way to do a piece of that, but there's work to do. This group.
But, you know, again, Gary, I've asked to present my request to the committee at some point in time, and I'm not sure if that's later today.
It'll be Monday,
Okay,
15th.
well, I won't be here Monday, so we'll have to push that.
so maybe have to go to next
Not
month.
this one.
No, the 15th,
The 15th, I'll be out of town.
so might have to wait till next month then.
That's fine, whatever, I want to follow procedure.
All right,
I just want to make sure that we put that as a list, this new issue. So,
Yeah, and just look at the financial side, keep in mind that the sheriff deputies,
Yeah.
the jail and dispatch, there's 43 people. At current labor costs, just the labor costs, is $2.5 million. And the projected revenue for the general fund, 1.6 is 10 million. And we're getting, we're feeling a lot of pressure from the law enforcement center to increase those wages because of the attrition rate and the ability to be able to recruit, that whole, all that stuff. So that is $2.5 million is what the current, so if you increase that 20% to be competitive, now you're at 3 million. So that's a big challenge that we've got with this 43 employees out of 100.
You said we're overspent. Where specifically are we overspent?
Let me ask you a question. Why is the county having borrowed money?
Answer the question. Where are we overspending?
Well,
I want to know specific. You got out there and said that we're overspending. Where specifically are we
we have
overspending?
too many employees.
Okay.
Okay, we have 180 labor costs, $8.2 million in labor costs.
Okay.
All right. You're paying out $1.1 million in defined benefit plans, labor. Okay. And on top of it, you've got 2.7 million in group medical, of which the county's paying 97% for. And in addition to that, you have, what is it, 150 grand for 200 grand for proactive MD, and then you've got the HSA. So, and then to top it off, you have an employee policy handbook that we can't afford. And that's where we are. Those are the big rocks.
Right. It's all labor.
It's big rocks. And we don't address that, right? And it's like right now, I mean, we, based off their forecast, which is keep running forecast. We're sitting on 4 million of the general fund cash reserve balance at the end of 2026.
What do we, well, we can't cut the health benefits because that is federally mandated expenditure that we have to spend.
No,
They're actually.
if you have to sponsor it, you don't have to pay for it.
yeah, we don't have to pay for it. We're
Right.
paying 97 provision, but we don't pay.
97% of, I think we're paying 97% of the healthcare.
All right, I tell you what, you go get on the phone and you go call Patty Perry and you get a hold of APAC.
Sounds like you already have a joint share.
I just did, that's 97%.
You're talking,
You trust me or you don't?
no, so employees are paying 3% of the cost.
Right. Well, let me
It makes money.
200.
Well, here, you want,
So 200.
just sit here, let me give you an example.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm 65 years old. I'm a county council member, right? I was promised group medical when I got elected. I pay $340 a year for my group medical. Okay. In addition to that, I get $1,000 in HSA contributions. So that's a year. That's a year.
Paying three.
I pay $340. I can get the paycheck and show. Okay.
Well,
I'm paying $340 a year payroll. I pay $340 divided by or 26 pays. I get $1,000 in HSA contributions. So now I make $600, right? And then I get free drugs from Proactive MD. I'm fat and I'm on high blood pressure. And I go in and get my free drugs. That's a hell of a deal. I actually made money on a group medical. If I'm completely been 100% self-employed for a long time. I was paying $18,000 a year to, all right, prior to me getting elected. right, with a $4,000 a year deductible for one person, major medical. And if I would have, and the only thing that saved is that that contract that I had was before ACA was passed, the Affordable Care Act. Had I have lost that contract and been forced to go on ACA, I have no idea what I've had to pay. So that's a huge, so when I look at my compensation and the reason I put so much time and energy into this whole role of council member is I'm not going to steal from the county. Well, if you don't do your job, you're stealing. So it's, our salary's what, $6,000, $58, something like that a year. But then I have to factor in the fact that I've got we're about $20,000 a year economic benefit from the medical. So my compensation really is around $26,000 a year. And that's where we are. And it's just, that's
Okay, that's good. And we're gonna take a break here in a minute. Go ahead, Ed.
Yeah, just real quick, right, I looked at, with a broker, how much a year it's costing us. We could go out and do a long care or affordable care. That's costly. So it is astronomically high. So that's one. And then two, to your observation, I don't know that you know until you do a deep dive on all expenses, whether or not they're reasonable. Okay, and I think that deep dive is something that has to happen. It takes a lot of time.
Yeah, I've done the deep dive.
Yeah, Jimmy has been.
Hours and hours.
I know you have, right? There'll be a deeper dive.
Well, the deep,
To give you an example, on that, because council is not responsible for the health insurance.
yeah, we are, because we have to pay for it. We have to pay for it.
Okay.
We can tell the commissioners we're not paying.
I know we can, but.
Sorry.
All right, Ed,
Can we
Ed,
take it?
Yeah, we're gonna take a break.
Thank you.
5-minute break, and Darren and Jim are gonna go out and settle this. Let's watch. Hey, Kevin, if you wanna stick around when you come back, we're gonna do the CBC.
I expected something done the first hour, not.
You're gonna come to this.
Dead horse or something.
It's already.
I said it's just part of the
And I guess I don't get. That's what it says. And how do I disagree with what you said?
commission made contributions from other sources. Terms and conditions. Commission fees necessary and desirable.
So you would consider.
If you want trails. Sure.
Okay,
Yeah.
that's fine, and that,
Yeah, so if you want to grant money to people, right? And you are reject request and proposal for funding or qualified under subdivision 6, right? So here's your grant line. You have to qualify for this, which means they have to be nonprofit.
okay. So otherwise we put it, so we say we're gonna fund.
Yeah, so if the commission wants to use contributions from this public source
Saying the income tax
as necessary and desirable, then what
we have to put in the budget, but if it's a grant, it has to go to.
grants, right, where you a request to work with.
So like we're doing now, like with Hilly House and
Yes,
Chamber Fest and the Playhouse and
yeah,
those are all grants.
yes, so, okay.
Those
So
have to
they
be
have
not
to
for profit.
qualify.
But let's say that we wanted to do golf.
No, we would have to put that in our budget, CBC budget.
So you can only do that at one point in the year then, or can you?
You could ask for an additional.
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah, which, what
Yeah.
What our grant process
Yes.
is set up,
Yep,
or the whole
okay.
thing is set up, that works.
Okay.
Yeah, so
So
the
it's the public
commission,
funds.
if the commission thinks that trails or connection and trail or accessibility is important, you could fund that through your budget. It may not be at budget right now because maybe you don't have that fully fleshed out in terms of what that cost is. Yeah, for the addition.
Cool.
Yeah.
I love it.
And it's, right, innkeeper's money doesn't go anyplace but innkeeper's fund. Right, it doesn't move from innkeepers to general fund, it doesn't general fund money that goes to innkeepers. Only innkeepers is in here, so. If there's a motion money for something, it's not gonna record, it's a budget. Yes, and it's. And then it comes through.
Then the large corporations.
I can't even transfer myself and write a check.
I think a lot of, I think there's so much more clarity than what any of us ever thought. I'm well being.
Well, I did too. I guess I did. Truly did. It's county property taxes.
I think ultimately it's just happening once and for all. Right? What can we do with this and how do we even make it work? And so I feel like
So,
we're there.
right, so park and rec, that's an easier thing, right, to really. That is important. Right,
Yes.
so, so,
And the fairgrounds, things were done, it's easy.
I think that's the easy one. Safety portion is a little harder, right, and that is.
I think the intent with Park and Rec is to get it out of there, so they can allocate it. Yeah. And so therefore it never has to cross your desk.
The only, like, the only thing that so far I've done in terms of like, there's a special.
I think you had a good analysis like that. If we do have a public big event where we have to
Part of
pay.
the budget, that would be part of the budget up there.
Oh, the grants, yeah.
Right,
Yeah.
because I know
Grant, you gotta have,
at the music center, they pay for those officers to do traffic.
and that comes out of expense of every show.
Or you have to, or you have to fund the expense until it can be paid back.
It'll,
Yeah, so.
So it has to go into. Make your life a little bit.
Right. I mean. Guidelines for Jacksonville does, we well, I mean, worked with 10 years ago. They kind of been tweaked along the way.
or their CD, or their.
For their so they have promotional grants. Right? And that could be something putting on. There's $400.
Yeah.
Right, yeah, the calls always have the best.
Right. So there's promotional grants. And then now called developmental grants because we just have some money sitting there. Legislature has said, hey, you should think about it. Let's take it. So we have developmental grants to with. Let's take a pick about kind of developing out something that leads into tourism. What some of that has gone.
We're gonna get into the budget now. First thing, since it's up here and Kevin's here, is we're gonna talk about the CVC budget. And you'll notice, Kevin, we've thrown the whole Parks Department into you in the CVC budget. Yeah, that's what this is. If you look up there, the color code at the top, there's 4 colors. Third one says Park and Rec Department to Convention Visitors and Tourism. So we've taken it out of our budget. If you total up the values, about $200,000 shown here in the purple color. So, any thoughts on that?
Susan, is that a good idea? Legal, et cetera?
Right, I mean, that's what we were just kind of discussing. That's the spot that it's really easy to wrap your head around stuff for Park and Rec being eligible for these tourism dollars, right? They get a lot of people coming in for the trails. A lot of people will stay a weekend, right? The concept with innkeepers is you want heads in beds, right? Because they're then paying that innkeeper's tax if they're here 29 days or less. And so, right, this is the spot where it's an easy place to get your head around. Here's a place where we can move this out of general fund dollars to now come out of innkeepers dollars. So I don't know if they have any.
And so it's legal. This looks good to you.
Right, yeah, and that's the other thing we talked about, right? So what the statute says is anything that the commission, CVC, deems necessary, I'm sorry, hang on, they can use contributions from the public source, right? Your tax dollars, which the commission deems necessary and desirable, right? So if they feel like trails are desirable for tourism, then they can submit this budget. I know they didn't submit this because I know this has been a work in progress since they submitted their budget. So, but this is the place where potentially it gets some freeing up of some general fund dollars.
So yes, it's legal.
Yep.
And salaries too.
Right, if they need people to maintain the trails. If they, unless you're gonna go out.
CVB salaries, so they should be able to pay the.
Yeah, but unless CVB or Kevin's gonna go out, which, right, your CVC board isn't employed, right? They're simply serve as your board. You don't have CVC employees, right? You contract with the CVB to do that work. So unless they're going to go out and maintain the trails or mow ball fields or, install something at pickleball courts or do something down at the fairgrounds, like these are the people that do it.
Speaking of fairgrounds, why is that?
I don't know that it's comprehensive, but these are just representing.
Well, $35,000 fairgrounds.
Out of
Other
where?
funding, taxpayer funding.
Out of where?
Commissioner, but 10, page 10. Fairgrounds, 35,000.
I guess my question, I'm not opposed to this at all. I just only one person in the commission, but I think it's an issue, but the budget dollar now comes to 1.4 million.
Kevin, would you come point at it up here so we call it?
Here's the figure.
Yeah.
This is what your proposed budget, this is what I submitted last time. Which is there, so I know what that is. So, so now we're at 1.4 million, and that's okay. Then I guess that means we're assuming we're taking some of the new 3% money to pay for this.
Yeah. Unless you have another.
Well, no, because I mean, with what we were collecting in the 5%, we were collecting about 1.2, 1.3 million. So as long as we all know that some of that's going to have to come out of the new.
It's expected to.
It's expected to, and that's the good point. I think we need to designate somehow, and this is a good question for reading, within our budget,
source of funds for each of these expenses, which we already do. It's just a matter of really helping us identify that source for these expenses, just like we all other sources.
We need to document some kind of breakdown for the metric that we use for the innkeeper's tax. I mean, it's now 8%, so each 1% represents 12.5% of the total innkeeper's tax revenue.
Would that have to be included in a contract that you have to CBC in order to do this?
No, this is actually budget now.
Right.
She's saying.
So that's a good question though.
But the CBC would have to contract with Parks and Rec to do this?
No,
No,
not this one.
Okay.
Let's back up here a second, just to create some clarity. I sent this document to Dave Hall and Eric Commissioner on this, the innkeeper's tax, state statute. So Dave submitted it to the legislative service agency, and Eric Cook left me a voicemail yesterday or Monday, Tuesday evening. And then I was supposed to get a document from him. One of the questions that I had was with regards to this IC 6929-86 and 8. Each county that imposes an innkeeper's tax may not deposit or transfer money into an innkeeper's tax fund, into any other fund. And then it goes on and states deposit or transfer money in any other fund into its innkeeper's tax fund. So my interpretation of the following is that only innkeeper's tax revenue is to be receipted into the innkeeper's tax fund. And it is not to be transferred out to any other fund, period. So all revenue is received in the innkeeper's tax fund. Once the innkeeper's tax revenue has been receipted into the fund, then only disbursements are allowed for any and all approved allocations by the CBC Board of County Council. So when I look at this right here, the good thing is we have line items for each one of these expenses coming out of the innkeeper's tax fund. And then the other thing, we get a 30-day report that Reedy's providing us, where we can watch how much is being received in year to date, every month, every 30 days. So to me, we submit this budget from DOT with their blessing. But as we see this revenue coming in, and we begin to see more revenue coming in and disbursements, then as far as I'm concerned, there is nothing to prevent the council, if the CBC wants to come to the council and we want to do an additional appropriation mid-year. Always do an additional appropriation.
Well, which is what's gonna happen with any of these projects that the Quality of Life Group works on.
Right.
It's gonna come to the council for additional appropriation, because it's not.
Yeah, the only thing,
Which is, I had it, a dollar amount in there, just so.
yeah.
It's fine.
Yeah.
So you guys, everything will be an additional appropriation.
Right, if you guys come and say, hey, we're gonna set up C, right, we're gonna need X, and then you can come before the council, and then we can do an additional appropriation to cover that line item for that EDC. Right. So the only thing I ask is that, back to the culture, is that we all don't make decisions in vacuums. Right? We keep us, I'm not micromanaging, but I would like to jump in the loop of what we're talking about, so that I'm not surprised.
Well, I think this Quality of Life Group has really, it's helped with a lot of that.
Yeah.
But I think from the CBC standpoint, they're kind of upset. And it is a very diverse group of people that's involved in that, and 3 council people. So it's, and we do have anywhere from 2 to, I don't know, 8 or 9 public people sitting out here as we're meeting around the nation. So we do have. So
One last disclosure, if you guys want a copy of this,
I've got it now.
well, if you want the whole thing, I can email it to you. Yeah, you do that. So that you know.
Well, and saying that too, the one thing it gets to be confusing, and this was confusing during the last year's budget thing, it's not this, but when the music center pays their mortgage payment. They write a check to the county, they take it to the auditor of the treasurer's office, it's deposited in the deposit thing. The auditor of the treasurer writes the check off to the bank, which is how it has to be done. But the money gets deposited into, and I think Scott told me the other day, it gets deposited into the innkeeper's tax fund in its own line, it has its own line in there. The money comes out of the innkeeper's tax line, out of another line. And because it doesn't show in those funds as a wash. I think you got a report the other day that said one of these funds was negative by $600,000 or whatever, $500,000, and it's because the way it's posted, in that. It washed itself out. If you look at line, 510 and 550, they're one's the in, one's the out.
There's a mortgage receipt.
Yeah.
And then there's mortgage disbursement.
Yeah.
There's two separate items. And so the auditors got to make sure they go in and true up.
It's always kind of interesting why it goes, and I know it's because it's back on the innkeeper's. So like it's the second. It came up that, hey, you're collecting, $1.9 million in innkeeper's tax, and no, we're not.
I think I
yeah, some other people, but still, we're not collecting that. That's, this is what we're collecting.
What is the annual debt service?
$660,000.
So Susan, would the CDC have to go back and vote to approve this then?
I think just for purposes of clarity of your minutes, you can retroactively do that, saying, we presented a budget, so reworked it a bit, right? We're still within your advertised budget, so that's not an issue. But just for clarity of your minutes, here's what's going to be our budget for 2026. And so that way everybody is on board with that.
Yeah, you had the 500,000 in there.
Yeah, the dollar amount is still.
Yeah.
Less than.
Yeah.
And when I get this document from Eric Cook and also maybe, Brad or Dave Hall, I can forward that to you. The purpose of me setting this out is I really want to create a lot of clarity around what we can do, what we cannot do from a state statute standpoint. And I thought Eric Cook is an attorney, for how long he's been, Indiana senator, but for God's sakes, he got out of it.
You just have to remember you can't do anything without the approval of the CDC.
Oh, I know, it's true. I know. I'm just trying to clear it up.
I mean, granted, you're the one that probably has the final say on the dollar, but we don't approve it.
Right.
You can't.
Well, and then let me add this, all right, going back to policies. I'm not aware of any policies that we have with regards to appointing board members. The council approves 3 CDC members, and I believe commissioners do 2. And what I want to try to head off and avoid is making decisions based off personalities that, well, I didn't get my own way, so I'm getting rid of Jenny Tillman. That's a real disservice to the county, because our goal to me would be to really try to develop a 5-member cohesive group that works well together. They understand the statutes, they understand the challenges that they face, they've done the work, and they're a think tank, they work well. But if we've got constant turnover on these board members because council and commissioners make very subjective, personality-based, biased decisions on board members, that's a disservice to the county. So for example, the Brown County Regional Sewer District, they've got a really good solid board. And that board should not be disrupted by, appointing some new person that doesn't have a clue or didn't understand the history of, the check, because that's a $50 million project. Right. So this is where we get back in. What's the policy the council has for appointing board members, and making sure that we get good, solid
keeps the people working well together. I think that's what we. I agree with you. Yeah. So to me, it starts with, well, let's get very crystal clear about the statutes, so we can kind of get rid of this, what we can do and what we can't do subjects, and now we're all on the same page, right? Then have policy or governing document for the CDC, then have a very well-organized, good, solid group of 5 to manage that. And then, that should go to eliminate a lot of chaos and a lot of problems in the future. Right. I would think. Maybe I'm living in a dream world. No, I think you have to look at every board. Yeah. Especially some are annual appointments, ours, the council appoints for 2 years and the commissioners is an annual appointment. So every 2 years, all 5 of us could be replaced, and it's like, now we got, I've been there 22 years. The next longest person is Jim Schultz, who's been there 6 years. So, Jimmy's been there 2 years. Well, I think the word would be continuity.
So back to the CBC budget real quick. I'm looking at that music center line at bottom there. Page 20. This one, I know we cut out.
I think we cut out the mortgage line.
This was an extra.
There was just a time that the council said, hey, let's keep something in there in case we have to pay the budget, pay that, and take that out. Right.
200,000 was taken out. And then we've got, as far as mortgage payment music center, it was 665 here. Now it's only 332. Oh, we didn't budget.
It should be 0.
It's 0.
It should be
where,
0.
My question is, where is
because
that?
the music center pays it in and the county insurance ground pays it out. So it should be.
You can't, we have to give authorization to spend.
No, that's. No.
I think.
No, because, that's always been the thing, is it's, the music center the music center first paid their payment straight to the bank. And
Because it's a building.
the county said you can't do that. Because the way it's done, so they pay the money to the county auditor. The county auditor then writes the check out.
Yeah.
So how is she authorized to write that check?
Because it's a bond. So when you issue that bond,
So,
you
yeah,
authorize those payments. You do not have to authorize them every year.
Because it's already spelled out in the
You
administrative.
don't have to approve the budget either.
Right, no, it goes without appropriation. The auditor mails the check without any appropriation from you because all of that was done in the bond process.
So what, I guess maybe we should be looking at the fund report to see where that posited, and then where did it come out of.
It's all in the innkeeper's tax fund.
I know this is and if we're saying it's gonna be 666,000, I just don't like making large payments without any kind of tracking of what, I guess the bond tracks it, but
yeah,
council approves the budget, and I don't like 600,000 going out without us putting it somewhere.
But you're not, it's like,
well,
but
it's not a wash, so.
But in the past, we've also known that not enough came in to meet what was going out, and so I want to make sure we are
Well, because it's
watching.
part of the bond payment agreement, and administrative agreement, we can't cut that funding.
I'm not saying cut it.
No,
I mean,
I'm
it's
saying,
0 right
well,
now.
if you put it in there, then it becomes
an
expense
additional,
line.
right?
It's subject to our.
As long as you take the income.
We already approved it in the administrative.
You just have to
agreement.
put 2 lines in, the mortgage payment in, the
Yeah,
mortgage
it needs
payment
to be
out.
shown what's coming in and what's going out. And we need eyes on it, and we need to approve it, in my opinion. Because if we don't, we have hundreds of thousands of dollars. That's 1.2 million in a year coming in and out with 0 documentation.
Well, whether you approve it, you at least need to have eyes on it to see.
Yeah, it needs to be in our documentation. Like right now, as an example, in that overage report Jim sent out, I think that was trying to meet my request from a previous meeting. It shows a $388,000 deficit in the music center mortgage payment account. Now, there's probably a reason for that.
Yeah, if you look at the fund report, they offset each other.
And so right now, our fund overage report that Jim said, well, it's reading, shows we're 388,000 in the red because we didn't budget anything. And so I'd rather budget what we know is happening than see these surprises come out later.
Hang on, Scott, hang on a second. First of all, there's a fund, which is revenue source, and then there's line item, which is an expenditure. Yeah, okay. Can we stop referring to everything as a fund?
Okay, because
No, I'm not.
Yeah. Julie, we all gotta have them. And just, there's line items, there's a fund. So what I just heard from you is in the innkeeper's tax, there's a line item for the revenue and there's a line item for disbursements on the mortgage. Correct. Okay. We don't have to approve that because that was part of the underwriting that took place on the two notes, because there are two notes.
Correct.
Just the same as we have a $4 million note that we just issued at the end of 2024-25. That I believe the debt service is the tune of $1 million a year on that $4 million general obligation fund for capital improvements. We don't have to approve that because that's already built in.
We already did.
So that's not part of our budget. We don't need the debt service. We don't approve, period. We have no control over that. We can't go in and say, well, we're not gonna pay the $1 million a year on the $4 million bond.
Yeah, we can't say we're not gonna pay it, but we should also.
But it's not part of our budget.
Why not?
Because our budget is essentially limited to the primary funds, which is this first page right here. You know, general, acute capital, public economic, public shares, motor vehicle highway, NVH restricted, local road street, blah, blah, blah. It's these funds right here.
It's not limited.
For the most part, they are. It is because we have no control over our 8,000 series funds, which I believe are federal grants. Because if you look at Gateway and you look at the total cost of Brown County government, it's around $75 million. So we only have oversight, I believe, on around 22, 23 million, and the 23 million is a breakdown because the revenue streams come right here. So that's really because what the sole fiscal responsibility of the council is the tax levy. That's it. That's what we do. And we've got to submit these budgets because DOGF, they've got to calculate tax levy within state statute. You know, we both line or below the line on the tax levy.
So,
That's
I
where
mean,
we are.
Susan, if it's legal to not show 1.2 million in transactions in our budget and documentation, I guess that's okay. But it's probably not prevented either. And if we think due diligence is important, like right now, we're showing $380,000 overage. Like it's showing up as a problem now because we haven't budgeted for it. I'm not sure it needs to be in the innkeeper's tax fund either. I think it has to be separate from that now. That it's new legislation requires it to be separate from the innkeeper's fund.
You're not budgeting your debt payments
Yeah.
because you've already done that in the bond
It
process.
says mortgage payment music center on here.
Well, I think that's right.
It's
Mortgage
it's debt
payment,
service.
mortgage center, Maple Leaf Building Corporation loan payment is on here as a line. And mortgage payment music center is on your line, but they both have zero in it. We know 1.2 million is coming in and out. Like, why aren't we showing it?
First of all, 667.
Yeah.
It was 660 something.
Paid
Yeah.
twice a year. Yeah.
In
No, they
three
pay,
years.
they give the county a $55,000 plus
Yeah.
minus check every month.
And see, this is why we
We paid
need
every
documentation. Because we should have. some good-
Right, but, okay.
Yeah.
But, and we can get down in the weeds and we can spend a lot of time and energy on this, and that's fine, if that's what you wanna do, go for it. Okay, whatever.
I think we just budget for it and we.
There is no one.
But no, you've already approved that appropriation. If you budget for it again, you're giving them another $650,000 to spend.
So
It's already appropriated
where
through the
is,
bond
you're saying it's in
process.
the budget already? Been appropriated?
It's not in your budget, it's bond. And so when you bond something, you are authorizing the auditor to make the
Right.
bond payments without being in the budget. Because it just happens, you have to do it. So if you stick another $660,000 in here,
And on the fund side, coming in and going out. We do it both places so we can track it.
no. I mean, that's not what your budget does, understand that.
It
So,
did in the past. And we identified through that tracking that there was a deficit of payments that the county was still due. And that's why I don't want to get rid of that tracking. Because, I mean, what, 5 years, we end up $1 million short, we don't even know it.
It's okay if you just want reports on that. That's not a part of your budget.
So it's tracked somewhere.
Yeah.
And so the question is, where? Where
Scott,
do we see it? And if we don't know, we need to figure it out.
Scott, hang on a second. I mean, I can email you the two.
I don't care if it's here or somewhere else.
Okay, and first of all, right, the innkeeper's tax was simply used as a kind of a cosigner for the Maple Leaf, basically, think of a cosigner. And as long as the Maple Leaf management, all right, they're in a positive cash flow situation where the revenue's coming out of the business operations of the music center to cover the $667,000 a year in debt service, then there's no issue. If, on the other hand, something occurs, so for example, the COVID thing in 2021, and now all of a sudden the music centers, their occupancy rates taking a nosedive, red ink, and they don't have the cash flow to take care of the debt service. But at that point in time, we would probably have to step in because we're going to have to use the innkeeper's tax to guarantee those two notes, right? Period. So as long as the Maple Leaf is profitable and, it's a money machine, it's not a big deal. It's only if the music center, you guys mismanage the place.
We have some black swan event.
That's right. Black swan event.
That's a
Yeah, so.
So again,
Here's where it's tracked. This is the budget for the music center. It's tracked there.
Yeah.
budget for the music.
Yeah, but there's not, I see what Scott's saying, but I assume somewhere with everything, your $1 million mortgage or payment that you pay on your $4 million, somewhere that's in
Here's where
paperwork.
it's-
Sandy shaking her head, yes. So,
Sandy, I mean, we show the money coming into a fund that the music center gives the county. It goes into a fund. I think previously it was an innkeeper's tax fund.
it is, it's a line
And
item.
it probably now, Susan, it sounds, if what I'm hearing is correct, is actually, we cannot put money in there from outside sources, so we may need a different line.
It may have to go to some miscellaneous revenue line in a building operations. So,
So,
He could create his own.
so we have two doctors.
Which one, Doug?
Doug.
One,
Yep.
we may need to move that revenue fund line for music center payments to the county to a different line item based on new state law, possibly. Two, we can see the funding coming into the county, but what we need to see also is the expense line of money going out to the bank, so that when we reconcile those two, I mean, this is real basic, like, we just need to be able
But
to.
that would be your case with any.
It would, and we always do it that way.
Any
So
loan
in
you're
this
paying.
case, we would not do it and not show it and
It
not.
should be
track
handled the same way as any loan you're paying. The $1 million you pay on the $4 million, whatever you pay for any
It
bond.
just needs to be accounted for so we can track it. Just like I said, last year, year before, we noticed a deficiency. The county was owed money and we noticed it because we were tracking both sides and the council was looking, I was looking at it. And so we've got to just know where that is, where the expense line is. It sounds like it's the only one that we don't know. And it probably can no longer be in the innkeeper's tax expense line. And and it looks like we have pulled it out. There's two lines are where we used to do it and now we're not using those.
Right.
We did it in 424. It looks like we pulled it at 25, but we're still spending out of it. So something's not quite right there.
Well, what you're not seeing is there's still another line.
the revenue.
Right. There's no revenue here. These are all expenses.
Right, that's what I'm saying. You're not seeing the revenue line. There is a line.
Yeah, if that's a fund line, which is separate. That's not my worry. It's where are we showing it going out? Over 10 years, that's 6.6 million, see it somewhere. And maybe it's not here, but it's gotta be somewhere. If we're pulling it out of here, it's gotta be somewhere that we need eyes on. So we can correct.
In the auditor's office.
Yeah, I mean,
Right. I mean,
that would just be with all your other loan payments.
Right.
Yeah, in the auditor's office.
But there has to be, I'm assuming there's some kind of report that,
Yeah, I think that's what Jim's doing. I think Jim went down to talk to Doug.
So we have changed it. We used to do it one way. We changed it and we just need to make sure we.
there again, you're not seeing all the lines. the fund.
Our budget doesn't show any revenues, all it shows is expenses.
When I say we
That's
change
part of the
it,
budget.
yeah, when I say we change it, these are the adopted budget, A27, okay? For music center warranty, no wait, I'm sorry, that's CD. Or 665 here is what was spent. Maybe you're right, maybe we did.
You had no adopted.
Keep spending out of that line, so my question, like, why, if we're gonna start spending
The
out of
problem is you're not seeing the other line that is right underneath that in there. The numbers are really close that shows the income.
yeah, these are expenses.
Right.
Again, it's not, we're gonna see that.
Well, it is important. Well, it is important to see that
It
though.
is.
For this situation, it's important. Because see, most of them, you're not seeing the income come in. So the $1 million you pay for the $4 million, you're not seeing income come in.
We're now getting those funds.
But this particular one, the music center is bringing physical check to the auditor and they're turning around writing the check out. So, I mean,
It's a
so
weird thing.
you do have some in and out right there and it should,
Something.
two lines, it should just be zero.
You look at the, it's just something different. Nothing.
We don't have to labor it, it's just,
Yeah, no.
we can't just overlook $660,000 and act like, oh, we don't need to see it because we know just last year we had a problem. And so we gotta reconcile the council. Council raised that issue, maybe I did, but, and right now we're showing deficit on that line. So maybe if we don't think we need it, let's eliminate the line so we don't keep getting.
Yeah, I didn't bring my fund report with me, but it's,
We usually get one, I think we got one yesterday. And that fund report, she said what? Kevin?
she fund 1127, that's the number you're wondering.
But I mean, what would it?
It should show your in and your line items, for your in and your out. So if you've spent out the 332,000, you should have income of 332,000.
I'm not getting that fund report. You know. Yeah,
Because when you don't see both sides of it, you're gonna see, it's gonna show
Yeah.
it's gonna show negative.
Yeah, we want to see the.
Okay, I got it. To clear this issue right here.
That's what-
He has spoken.
Put this issue to bed. and let me just-
Please, please.
All right, per Doug.
Yeah,
The innkeeper's tax fund is 1127.
yeah.
Inside the fund is a line item, which is 05300. Maple Leaf Management cuts a check monthly to the auditor of the county of $55,469.83.
Goes into that fund.
It's a that,
Okay,
stop.
that's fine.
Line item,
It's an expense item.
No.
their fund is revenue, tax revenue. Line item is expenses.
Okay, so you're talking about.
There are two line items inside 1127, which is the innkeeper's tax fund. Okay, 1127 is the innkeeper's tax fund. Inside the innkeeper's tax fund are two line items. The first one is 05300, which is where Doug receipts the check every month that he receives from Maple Leaf Management, correct? Because it's Maple Leaf Management, cut the check. Then he turns right around and on line item 58100, he writes a check for $55,469.83. To whom?
State Bank of Lisbon.
State Bank of Lisbon.
Those are both out of what kind of, is this a fund you're talking about?
First of all,
This is something with both expenses. I am revenue.
time out. Okay, a fund, there's like 176 funds in the county, right? There's all sorts of different categories of funds. Is where the revenue comes in. And inside the funds are the line items. And there's like over 800 line items. Because every department, which has a number. So, pick a department, so it's 68 commissioners.
is commissioners, yeah.
Okay, yeah, so 68 commissioners. And so inside commissioners, then you'll have the general fund, economic development, blah, 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 blah. And then you have all these line items inside. The line items are for basically disbursements. Right?
Expenses.
Yeah, expenses, right. But inside the innkeeper's tax or the innkeeper's tax fund, which is 11.7, that's the fund.
Revenue comes in.
Revenue comes in, right? Inside the fund are the line items.
Which are expenses.
Well, in this situation, there's two line items. Line item 05300,
Which is the revenue line item.
which is when the CVC cuts it, Maple Leaf Management cuts a check every month to the county. Because it's basically a pass-through, is all it is.
Zero sum should be zero.
It is a pass-through. Here's, I'll give you this to you.
Yeah, unfortunately, it's not on the same line, so
Right.
there's always a negative. in there.
So when this Maple Leaf Management cuts a check to the auditor, to Brown County government, assuming who the check's payable to, then I'm assuming that money then goes to treasurer, she deposits it and track it through that.
Yeah, they try.
Right, but yeah, so we track the revenue. Well, we track the deposits that the Maple Leaf Management pays to the county, and then we turn right around. And on this line item 58,100, we actually make a mortgage payment to the state bank of Lisbon. Right. That's how it works. So it's just a pass through these two line items.
And so do we need to
So we don't need to do anything.
pull it out of,
It doesn't.
our overage report is showing
There's-
deficit.
It's the only time that I, in my professional opinion, is if all of a sudden I get a phone call from the auditor's office and they go, hey, Jeff, what? You're really bad at this the last 2 months. That would be a red flag, right?
So,
Yeah, because they don't really know to write the check. I mean, they do know to write the check, but they don't write the check until we bring them the check.
Right, because there's no money in these two line items. It's a pass through.
in the past, it's not been the case, which is part of my problem. We were.
Here's your year to date.
In the past, it has not been the case. We were paying it out before we received the check. So again, and I see, and maybe we just remove this from this line item. I'm trying to find this line item.
Auditor didn't make the payment until.
That's what we-
Paid by.
That's,
No.
I know what he's talking about. I know,
Oh,
yeah.
yeah.
So we're showing a $388,000 deficit in fund overage report, which Reedy sent. And I'm trying to find the line item here, because I don't know why we would show a deficit. If we're tracking it this way, why would we be showing a $388,000 deficit elsewhere? Or unless we're paying out of the wrong account, or,
You're paying out two lines.
yeah, let's
The
make
money
sure.
comes into one line, you're paying out of another line.
Let me find this and make sure we just double check. Yeah, we saw. the
You
fund-
should have, you should
Here
have,
it is, here it is.
you should have.
Yeah, so it's 8,100. Yeah, that's that expense line item. So yeah, it's coming out of there and it's showing the deficit. So we just need to know. Well, we start seeing fund report, we'll see that we have received 388,000. And Jim, is that what you got here, the fund report?
Oh, no, yes.
It is, yeah. So if we get the fund report, get the expense reports now, which is new for us, we can see that it's zero sum and we should be looking at that. But we gotta get those reports and we're starting to get them, it looks like, so.
So there's where it's going. Well, man, I remind everyone that. Yeah, about 40 hours. And then they write. Yeah. Figure receipts. Yeah.
So
Well, I get this every month.
you get this.
Yeah.
Good. Good.
Yeah, because it shows this particular, I get it Cleveland and I'll show all the payments and everything. Yeah. every month. Doug sent me.
All right, so if we can fund report and expense report, we're gonna be able to cross-reference it. Right, this is spot. The 388 is just something I'm saying right now. The overage report shows us with 380,000 in the red. On that one, it's, we have to reference the fund report to make sure that we're. So I think we're okay. It's still kind of clunky.
Government.
Yeah.
Okay, so result, we can move on.
Yeah.
Let's go.
You know, your 25 minutes, talk about the 2026 budget.
Any other questions, Kevin? Kevin, Brian, any other thoughts, questions before we move on? Yes, sir.
50 minutes went really well.
You know what? I kept my heart.
That's true. He evacuated his seat at the proper time.
But back to CVC. We need to find 250. Harris Rush has only got 200 out of the innkeepers.
Well, that's straight up. There are other things on our fair board and things on that nature in here.
There's 35, now it needs to be keep it, what we're aimed at, what we're trying to do, so I don't fall short there.
Well, it's outside of this, Kevin, you know? What's outside of this is the big whole chunk of the parks. You were picking up expenses from other things like, fair board or what and that
Talked about was
Fair board, Pioneer Village.
Pioneer Village.
So we got 35,000 from the fair, these come out of commissioners.
It's out of, it's out of your edit.
Edit.
Well, we talked about, traffic control and things of that nature.
So we could pull 35,000 out of edit and put it into this, and that would make up 235, and we get 15,000. To hit 250, and public safety offsets.
What do you guys give to the Pioneer Village?
I think it's limited and it's like not been much.
But is it 50,000?
No,
I think it was 5,000.
it's been very limited. We need to increase it
I
significantly.
didn't think it was 5,000. Was it 5,000? That sticks in my head somehow.
So, yeah, we need 15K more here is my honest comment. And excuse me, you said lit funds or economic development, edit tax.
That's where your fair 35,000 is.
All right, so. There's what, there we go. 35,000 in this year's budget, that needs to be moved, in my opinion, to this. Kevin and Jimmy, we've talked about this for months. Any thoughts on that?
There again, I don't have a problem with it, and Jimmy hasn't heard Susan's explanation of this, so I think once we get it to this commission, it'll work.
Jimmy,
But there again, we have to, the whole commission has to approve it, so.
Jimmy, do you have thoughts on this transfer process or anything?
I've got a lot of questions. I need to get more up to speed. Yeah, because that sounds like red flags. Transferring money.
It's not.
Oh,
Yeah, it's not.
I need to be up to speed on that.
Yeah.
From a legal perspective?
Yes.
Okay.
The lawyer says it's legal, you're up to speed.
Oh, cool.
Susan, how do you want to, so we've got a CBC that on September 11th is about to make two important decisions. One is on the CBB contract, and we talked about a review there for you because it does not have a legal review yet, and we want you to review it, and we're up against the wall right now, and they are ready to sign it, and I think it's too early without your review. So that's one. Two is this process and the new state code that we need information on, which details how money can flow in, out, across, and through these innkeepers tax bonds, such as these payments to fairgrounds and parks and rec. The proper transfer process. It sounds like you're okay with that. It sounds like you're okay with
Scott, I
that.
just,
Hold on, Jim.
I just
There's
spoke to
a
the
contract.
contract.
Hold on.
Spoke to it.
There's a contract requirement apparently,
No.
and I think we just need to wait for Susan to review the new information.
Well, the information didn't, I don't know that that's really new, that the code it's just one that's been brought more forward that people have seen. And I think obviously that's been there. I don't want to know when that that code came in, but
Last year. It wasn't, they
But-
changed it this year, started talking, from what I understand.
Generally speaking, right, let's just speak very generally. You usually do not transfer money between your funds, right? Your fund is your fund. Whatever money drops into that is the money that drops into the fund.
That's called an appropriation.
If you spend out of it, it's called an appropriation, right? If you loan money from something else, you have to pay it back before the end of the year. But your general fund money is your general fund money. Your innkeeper's money is your innkeeper's money. Even though this provision just came into play, you should never have been able to transfer money between funds anyway. Right? So like,
Music center, that's kind of the mix, that just outliner to that, because money was
I think that got happened just because the innkeeper's tax back to that.
yeah, right. It was
I think that's
weird.
what got put.
Yeah,
Right.
so we are back to the commission, the CVC can use these contributions from public source, i.e. your tax dollars, innkeeper's tax dollars, which for things that the commission deems necessary and desirable, right? So if they deem the fairgrounds and improvements at the fairgrounds necessary and desirable for bringing people into the county, they can put this fair board expense of $35,000 that you see under edit into their budget. And we pay it from the innkeeper's tax. It doesn't transfer anyplace else, just like Park and Rec. It doesn't transfer anyplace else. It simply gets paid from the innkeeper's fund, and it comes through the CVC's budget.
Just remember, if you're gonna cover the 4-H, right? You create a new line item
Right.
inside the innkeeper's tax fund that says
This is
4-H,
4-H.
35.
Right. And then you're gonna have the same thing with Parks and Rec. I mean, you're gonna have to do like,
And then Doug, when the bills come in and Doug has to pay an expense, he goes to that line item and pays that expense out of that line item.
So that's what this is CBC now has multiple new line items.
Oh, they're gonna have a whole bunch.
Right.
They're already there.
So that's, we're already doing it.
Right.
Throw fairgrounds or whatever else goes in there.
Yeah,
So-
you need to add fairgrounds.
Right, if you want to move fairgrounds out of edit to
Add a new
CVC.
line item.
Yeah. Yeah, and then we need 15K more,
Okay. So we're going for progressing. Good. Any other thoughts, Kevin, Brian, before we let you go? Okay,
yeah, we're good.
we'll throw a few more things in there for you.
Sure.
and so, do you need Susan, well, you need her for the contract, yes, next week.
We've already talked to her.
You have,
And we have discussed the
Well,
fact,
She's working on it.
all right, we have discussed, do we need a new line item for CVC to pay you come out of the innkeeper's tax?
the legal,
No. You guys are getting money out of this for that.
no, I don't know what's going on about that. We cannot be, there is, I mean.
No, I know what he's saying. He and I, we talked about this.
Well, we don't want to pay for legal expenses for CVC
I
out.
mean, you're paying treasurer's expense for the new innkeeper's tax.
So we want to
And
pay.
you just want to make sure that's active.
I got one question for you guys, real quick. On the $1 million a year going into the CBD, and I appreciate you said, I've got questions.
Yes, I bet you do.
Still urgency. But the only question I have is, out of this pool of money, what percentage of that money that's going to the CBD are we spending on actually advertising, marketing, radio, print, all that to promote tourism? Is that $500,000? Is it?
So $500,000 goes direct to paid marketing.
Yeah, and then they do all.
And then, but that's paid marketing. There's a whole lot of list of other things that goes into, and that doesn't include website. It doesn't include content creation. It does not include
So what do we
print media.
What do we allocate? $600,000-700,000 a year to all promotion and advertising, actual advertising?
So it would be easier to answer that with what the administrative costs are out of the $1 million budget. Yes. So.
Yeah, because Kevin, when this, if you go back to the original tax and innkeeper's tax, when, I think the whole thing, Andy Rogers, whole thing.
1984.
1984, right.
And you guys gonna have it probably
$34,000.
is that what you? Okay. So, yeah, it's been able to grow the revenue. Good job, you grow the revenue, right? But that originally was the intent to really have those advertising dollars to buy ad space on radio and TV and newspaper. Because PP, that's before a lot different future. Because that was kind of the original intent was historically.
Oh, yeah. I mean, it
Yeah,
was,
for promotion, to really market the community.
well, that's what was available at the time, you know, billboards and newspaper and print and
Yeah.
radio. We did some TV, but tried to stay away from it because it was too expensive.
Yeah.
You know, so,
Yeah.
but you know, as times changed, you know, times changed.
So I remember 1987, a full-page color ad in the cover was about $3,000. That was new.
And get a half page for a quarter page for that.
Yeah, and when you guys buy marketing, I mean, is it, how far out are you? I heard once upon a time that when you look at ticket sales on the music center, it's about 100-mile radius around,
So our paid marketing goes to 3 DMAs.
what's it being?
A DMA is a direct marketing, area.
So do they buy all that ad space?
Yes, and I can get.
No, we don't
break
need
down.
to read
Anyways,
all that. Yeah.
Louisville, Cincinnati, and Fort Wayne.
Oh, okay, all right. Yeah, okay.
That's their target markets right now.
So are you guys gonna stay out of the East Chicago area and not at present?
Too expensive.
Too expensive right there.
I'm just.
So,
We don't need the region.
And it's not the East Chicago, it's more Chicago, North Chicago is where we'd want to be.
Oh, yeah.
yeah.
That's where we wanted to be, and it's, yeah, it's way out the price.
Yeah, North Shore is way out.
Yeah.
Okay, all right, we need to move on. Thanks, guys, appreciate it. It's been a very productive, involved approach. So, more stuff on this, Jim, you mentioned about possibility of stipends not being in this report. I did not find it here. You supposedly, what I have on that, I haven't had time to, get the two of you on the finance committee, want to schedule a meet with Jerry. And also with, Reagan, Reagan's wants to know the data entry basically, right? And kind of sit down with them, because I think what we really need to do is go down there, have a meeting with them, and then walk through this to make sure what we receive is accurate. Correct. Okay. They didn't call them stipends in some areas. Well, we need to make sure that what we got in here is accurate, because if you go back and look, because, and I put myself away because we're running out of time. If you look, there's a report under one page that goes in and shows, the 2026 forecasted total with the revenue, the forecasted revenue, because that's all I'm looking. I'm looking going through the fund, and I want to look at what's the budgeted total and what's the projected revenue. To determine, are we underwater, stay underwater, overwater, you guys feel like upside down? Yeah, and are we writing in red ink? Because my concern for these funds is, are we writing red ink? So for example, I don't have it memorized. We're paying $700,000 out of the fund, and he's got it. There's that last page. If you look at the last page of that report, it's on the screen. The last page. Go to the last page.
It is.
Yeah, right there. No, yeah, stop.
All the assumptions.
Increased lit, right, economic development, $700,000. So if we go up and look at lit, right, which is where's the lit? 1170. Yeah, 1170, right? And we go through, projected revenue total, $1,660,000. Budget at $608,612 an increase, $1,150,000. With the net, we stuck this $700,000 in there. Bam, right there. Okay, now, are we okay? Well, we got some money left over. But the issue is we're gonna know going forward that then we can't really pull any more money out of lead for 2026. Yeah. And see, and then the other thing that I think that would be important for us as a body is put in our monthly regular council meetings, and the three of us can get together and define how we want to do this. But the issue is where's our focus? And to me, as a board, our focus every month is we're basically looking at projected revenues versus what have we actually received in, and what's that cash balance? Because to me, my goal as a council member is we're setting at a AA- credit. All right, and to me, a AA, you know, I take a lot of pride in my FICO score. You don't know what FICO score is. Well, AA- is not a very good FICO score because it goes AA-, then it goes single A minus, then it goes triple B, and then it goes triple B, and then it goes to double B. We're considered junk stats. The reason our credit rating is AA- is historically we've been writing a lot of red ink at the end of the year. So we'll finish the end of the year and go into January, and we got all this red ink in the funds. Okay, and so what we got to do if we want to improve our credit rating, the first thing we got to do is we got to stay on top of these funds and make sure that we don't have any red ink in them at the end of the year. So everything is in the black. Cannot afford to allow that to happen. So we got to work very closely with the auditor's office, and then Reedy can do the reporting. So we need to pay attention to that, pay attention to the revenues, pay attention to the receipts, anticipate when we're going to hit red ink, and then figure out how are we going to pull the money and do the additional appropriations to clean this up, make sure we're in the black. Because if you go back and read the state board audits, right, one of the contributing factors to the AA- rating is you got to keep in mind the county carried over a negative 600,000 carryover balance in that 4,700. Now, had we cleaned that up, put it in black, we'd have been all right. And so we've got to stop. Pay attention to how much we received in, where we are, where our reserve balances are. Make sure by this fourth quarter that we clean up. For example, I had a meeting with Julie, Doug, and Caitlin Schaefer. I've got it in my briefcase. We went through, I forget how many funds, a lot. So right now we got negative carryover balances and funds from 2024. That I'm waiting for Julie, and I need to give Julie because she needs to come to us because Susan, when we do an additional appropriation out of the general fund to clean up, let's say we've got a half of those funds, so we've got 200,000 in red ink, or that requires an ordinance to do an additional appropriation out of the general fund to clean up those negative balances, is it not?
It should.
Okay, so that is, you know, so like right now, if you go over here, you know, this is, you know, this number was originally, I think 10.5. All right. Now you guys made some adjustments that brought it down just a scooch under 10 million. All right. Here's our revenues. Right. So right now, based off of these assumptions, this projection, I mean, we're basically at a push. But now keep in mind, here's your in 2026, you know, projected cash balance. Now, this number right here is kind of warm and fuzzy. It says, well, we got 4 million. All right, we're all right. We're not too bad. But let me ask you this. Let's say you all decide that we're going to go in and put in the budget. We're going to pull $1 million out of the general fund, and we're going to put it in the put it in the rainy day fund, which I would love to do. Really like us to do. And then we're going to pull another $500,000 out, and we're going to put that in the 4,700 account. And why are we going to take $1 million out of the general fund to put that in the rainy day? Well, the reason we're going to do that in 4 years, that $4 million note matures. That's it. 4 years. Well, in 4 years, we're going to have $4 million sitting in the rainy day, which means that we don't have to do a general obligation bond, which means that the people that live in this county pay less in taxes. Okay, so if you want to lower taxes, that's how we lower taxes for the citizens. But here's the challenge with it. I got think of your own checking account. I got enough money in my checking account. Okay, I can pay 3 months for the living expenses. Now I know I need to put a roof on the house. I really need to take some of this money and put it over on the side to pay that roof. But if I take some money off on my checking account and put it over the side to pay that roof, then it makes me a little squirmish because now I got 30 days for living expenses, right? So I don't want to pull the money out of there. Rather have a warm fuzzy feeling anymore, right? And so if we pull $1.5 million out of that this year to do that, that brings that down to $2.5 million, doesn't it?
And then if we have negative carryover balances, it drops even further. If you're not careful, all right, are we okay? Can we pass this budget right now? Sure. We're good for 2026. That's all I insist. But I'm not, my concern is on 26. It's what happens in 27, what happens in 28, what happens in 29. And you're, you know, at this rate, I mean, this is what you're spending, this is what you got coming in. But keep in mind, look at the disclosures, right? Cash balances do not include any additional appropriations, comes and transfers after July 31st. Right? The other thing this doesn't include is we've got to watch, my understanding from the auditor's office, hopefully this is accurate, but on these line items, if we don't use all the money that's been appropriated in the line items, then those are reverting, so that money that we allocated automatically gets dumped back into the funding source. Right?
Yeah, if it's not a non-reverting fund, yes.
Yeah, provided some, yeah, right. If it's a reverting line item,
Yep.
Right, that money automatically. So the other thing, you know, November, December, auditor, hey, you know, where are we? Where are our balances and how much money are we gonna have left over at the end of the year that we didn't spend, basically is the question. So to me, we need to keep it up here, look at the big picture, because what we're solving for is this is the issue. Because I've said this before, and nobody wants to hear it because there's nothing to feel good about it. It's not feel good. It's much more to have conversation, how we can spend money on projects, what we're gonna do, than it is, all right. If we hit the wall. This, that's off the track of thought.
So what we're still targeting for our AAA rating. Question is, okay, if that's where it's at now, we don't take the money out. What's the projection for 27? Is it gonna just keep accumulating? What do we know about that?
Well, again, we're not, keep in mind, did we not pass a resolution to put the money in the,
Correct?
did we not pass a resolution to appropriate an additional $500,000 to 47? Are we doing that?
And like you, but you're evaluating the trade-offs in doing that. And can we do that? That's the question.
Keep in mind, hang on a second, right, keep in mind, I had to go to Reed and say, hey, pal, okay, we gotta find out that we were short 770,000 people with 700. We were short in covering I've got it. The Apex gave me a number, and the amount that we funded for group medical for 2026, they did actuarially, there's a 50-50 probability based off the I'm gonna round up, say 2.8 million. 50-50 probability that we could end up with red ink and we could end up with black. Because see, that's another issue that we need to be paying attention to, is where are we year to date on our medical claims? Are we over? Are we under? Where are we? So I had to come back to Reedy and say, dude, you're gonna have to stick another 700 grand because there's no way in the world I want to go 126 completely underfunded on the 4,700.
All right, question for you.
Okay, so he does that, but then when he does it, he comes in the lid, and guess what it does to the lid? So what's gonna happen? We can get away with it this year, but you ain't gonna be able to get away with it next year, and that's where we're gonna run into problems.
Yeah, question.
One.
Hold on, I had
27, 20.
Yeah. Sorry.
You talk about taking the million out of the cash balance, putting it in rainy day, which we all agree.
We wanna do
that.
Right.
Now, we take, in 4 years, if we built rainy day up to 4 million.
Right.
We have a replacement item, or replacement, fund source.
Bucket of money.
To replace the go-up.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
But then that becomes then rainy day becomes a depletion fund because we're now using that. Well, hold on. We're using that to offset the expenses we pay for our go-up.
Right.
So once that's depleted, then again, we have to get another bond.
Right, because you're right. Yeah, right, we can't. The $1 million a year,
It's a cycle.
it's great in theory.
Right.
We can't afford it. Right. We cannot afford to take $1.5 million out of the general fund and fill up those two buckets.
Right.
We can maybe do it this year. We sure as hell can't do it next year. right? And
Because then we'll be using money to pay off the credit card debt. That we're not gonna have the money to pay the expenses going forward, so we're gonna have to build up the credit card debt.
and as a financial planner, right? It's what I do, right? Because this is really not any different than your typical household, just like a lot more people, a lot more money, a lot more money, right? Boy, I don't like negative cash flow. And you're running, you've got maybe 30 days, 45 days worth of money in there for expenses, living expenses. And you know that. And so then why do people have credit card debt? It's the same issue here. Why do we have to go out? And it was really, not to bring up the past, but I think the history of the county is we didn't have to borrow money for a while. And we did $1 million note for.
It's 2, then 3, then 4.
It was $1 million.
It started out at 2, then it went to 3, and then a 4. But here's what happened.
It was based on $1 million a year. So the $1 million.
Yeah, but keep in mind what happened here. If you look at the history, all right, that second note, the 3 million, we got written up severely on that, and
Because we used it
they used it for operating expenses. I mean, a bunch of it, because the county was in deep doo-doo. And so they had to use that general obligation bond money for operating expenses. So, to me, bottom line is we don't have a revenue issue. Okay, because actually when you compare us with the other 31 counties, our revenue is right where it needs to be. All right, but the issue is we got too much to go. It's labor costs, we have 180 employees, 8.2 million labor costs, $3.5 million in employee benefits. It's too much. We can't afford it. And the challenge with that is, well, there's nothing to feel good about it.
No.
Nothing.
It's gonna feel good.
What, and just so that you know, because I called the DLGF early on, right? Because I was struggling with, can a municipality become insolvent? And I'm sitting here going, no, not really, right? Because they can't sell like Brown County. Okay. So
We should take no mistake.
no. What the DLGF told me, okay, Rob Norris, whatever his name was, is that, let's say this number here hits 300 grand, right? Our revenues are, let's say, it's 10 million, but our expenses are now 11 and a half. Then there's no way that the DLGF is going to approve that budget. They're just not going to do it. So they're going to go, right? And they're not going to approve that here until this number falls in line with this number and this number stays in the black. As long as that number stays in the black, $100,000, $200,000, $300,000. So for example, there's a county, I don't know if it's Scott County, the county down south. I pulled up their cash and disbursements report off the Gateway, and they hit it. I mean, they hit major red ink, right? And the next thing what happened was, I think what they did is they went in, the council went in and just cut the lawsuit out of the sheriff's department. They went after their budget because that's the biggest expense, right? You want to cut labor, go after law, defund law enforcement, right? So they did, but then the sheriff came back and filed suit against the council, and he won.
Yeah, we're not there yet. And Jim, I think what we need is 27, 28 revenues from Rudy, because we're flying blind here.
No, you're not fine.
Well, I don't see 27.
Scott,
Let me finish. I looked through all our documents. We don't see 27, 28 projected revenues unless it came from way back when. I want to see that.
keep in mind, that is a projection.
That's for 26.
Okay, but do you know what's inside that number? Do you know how
I'm
we
looking
write
at
it?
27.
Scott, I'm asking you a question. Do you right now, can you explain
Well,
to
there's a
me?
bunch of stuff.
No,
Revenue is fine. That's what I'm asking. I'm looking for
Well, yes, you
27.
you better understand the revenue that goes in the
Yeah,
the
that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about the projected revenues for 27 and 20.
They're projections.
Yes, we want to see them.
I don't care about projections. I care about actions.
I do. Normally, we can see that, so we know when they're gonna hit red in those.
Okay, I'm just pointing it out.
That's for 26.
I just pointed it out.
But he's saying we're not doing enough due diligence to 26 to get to 26. The whole objective here is to get through the 26 budget to be totally proactive on the
I'm trying
27
to
budget.
get you guys to focus on now.
Right.
Speaking of that, I've got a
That's what I'm
suggested
saying.
cut.
I don't
We gotta
gotta
focus on
I
that.
want to focus on
Let's
26
focus on that.
Because as soon as you guys pass this 26 budget, then the reality is we've got to immediately start talking about 27. Okay, so how do we focus on now, right now?
Let's go to page 8 on your budget book, on the county council's budget. I'd like to propose $100,000 cut to the financial consultant, which has been increased to $132,000 this year, over zero last year. So I think we cut $3,000 out of that, into $32,000. That's the biggest cut we make this year in terms of council. And I don't know why it would go up to 132,000 more. And so I think we should just cut 100,000 out. We're on cut 132,000 out. As a great start to give us more cash and offset that cash deficit that Jim's highlighted. That's how we take action as a council. We cut money out of the budget.
Okay, I've got to leave this guy opposite. I got to leave. Another question before we leave. Tim mentioned that September 22nd is open enrollment. We've got to have Lori Sealand stuff all in locked in for them to go to that. We may have to have another meeting before that point, just so you know.
Yeah. All right.
Because I talked about, we've got to adjust all that new salary tier stuff.
Yeah, the salary stuff.
Yeah.
Susan's got to do the salary ordinance, right? And you guys have got to pass the budget. And I think trying to shift to a new compensation system from the old to the new.
Yeah.
Trying to do it and
It's too short.
It's too short. Yeah.
So
I do personally, I think we leave that proposed budget with 2025 as it is for 2025.
With no cost of living raise.
No COLA. Can't afford it. No COLA, right? And then what we do is we immediately start talking about 27 and address the new compensation system. And that will take effect with 27.
reasonable unless Lori's stuff somehow falls in place.
Yeah, it's easy and it's just.
Yeah, right. Okay, so that's what's on the table for us.
Page 8, right here, council, for some reason, we added $132,000 to our budget for next year for financial services. Thanks for describe what that is. We're supposed to be cutting the budget, not adding to it.
Do you remember?
Also added $10,000.
Didn't Lori have Lori.
Excuse me, what?
She just asked me if I remember why. Julie had like 45,000 in her budget. That
Some of it was part of that time, or was that other, that timekeeping?
I mean, until Julie got a bookkeeper, you were paying them for some bookkeeping, or I'm sorry, payroll. Let me clarify that. Payroll.
That's right.
So, I mean, so that's part of the reason I don't know in
Wait,
particular.
what's part of the reason for financial?
Payroll?
Have a payroll person.
What does that do? Consultants.
I think we had.
Well, that's reading
Because we were taking it out of our budget,
instead of out of,
This is
Julie.
this year, not next year.
but we didn't.
Right.
Have it.
So I did 132 popping in here. We're keeping our policy services at 45,000, keeping our professional services.
no,
We increased
Julie
it to
said
30,000.
take,
So that's
take-
142,000. Yeah.
Would you let her?
Julie said take policy services down. She didn't think she would need 45,000 in policy services because WIS was doing all of the work this year.
So it's still in.
We were gonna.
Take it down to 5,000.
Take it down to 5,000.
Take what down? 132?
No,
Policy.
the policy services from 45,000 to 5,000.
Yeah, we did that. Right.
But I don't remember why we kept 132 in there.
It's not kept in, it's new, it's all new. New budget. I don't know why. And we haven't, I can cut it.
Is it?
It's not, I was gonna say, I mean, it's not all new. It's moving from the auditor to you guys. So it's not all new, but some of it certainly is new.
132,000.
Some of it is.
Right.
Okay, so how
That's-
much did she move is the question. So like you
Right.
say, it's not all new.
She had 45,000 in policy services, which she said take down to 5. So it doesn't need to be 45 because WIS was doing all of the policy services.
Right here, the policy services needs to be 45.
Yes,
Okay, let's make that cut.
it's over there.
What's
Look
that?
at it in your 26 proposed budget line,
Okay.
right there.
Got that. Okay, so what else?
Her Greg Garitas moved from auditor to you guys.
Where's the auditor? Let's see here. He's up here.
Number 2, I think.
Yeah. Page 2.
Right here.
Clerk.
Under professional services, 65, that's,
I don't know. She also has Jackie in there.
Jackie's is professional services.
Yeah.
She's for 6,500. So I don't see 4,500, 40,000.
We keep,
It was somewhere else, a portion of it was.
So
But again, it's 132.
I don't remember. No, it's not all there.
Well, where's it coming from?
I cannot.
That's what we're looking.
Yeah, remember, we don't know what it is, and it's new. Let's cut it.
She actually took out.
You're somebody. He's old.
No, it's not.
It's not.
We'll find out what it was.
Yeah, we're not gonna cut it
Because
till,
we don't-
we're not gonna cut it until we find out what it is.
So-
It would be under technology agreements. I'm not sure, because she's dropped those by about 30,000.
Things were moved into it from somewhere else, so we'll need to wait till. I can't remember what it was. I don't remember.
Why would,
We moved stuff. from-
but there's nothing in her budget.
Yeah, there was. There was.
Yeah, part of it was we,
Some of it,
And
right.
if we decide we need to cut it, all we have to do is not spend it. I mean, it's our council budget. It's not like somebody else is spending out from underneath us.
Talk about leading by example.
Yeah, we don't,
So if the council,
we don't want to cut it, then have to go back in and do an additional correction.
we can't even explain what it is.
Well, she had technology agreements for 127,000. I'm not sure this is it, but then now they're down to 94. So she's got 33,000.
That's like her technology, cloud.
It should have been Caritas. Where was Caritas?
Not, you mean reading.
He was like 10,000.
Professional services, but she doesn't have it in there.
It's
She only
not,
got 6,500, which is Jackie.
But was part of it that time?
that was this
Yeah,
year.
we're gonna have
This is for next year.
Right. Yeah.
This would be for next year, the
Yeah.
timekeeping device,
Well, that would be.
program,
Oh, those,
the timekeeping
yeah, yeah, yeah.
program.
Software.
But again, that's not financial consultant expense, which is what I'm highlighting. That's a different expense.
So we'll have to find out, no speculating now, we don't have the information.
I think it's just a big place for us to look. We actually do need to cut something.
Okay.
You think we have an expense problem? That means we need to cut the budget. So you're like a 14. We can just cut it.
We have to decide what we're gonna do from here. I have to leave in 10 minutes because I got a doctor's appointment. So what do y'all wanna do?
Hey, Tim, Commissioner's budget, $62,000 increase in gas, oil, and food.
Pages now.
What is that? Why, I wonder why it's going up. Usually it's gas price associated. I don't think we anticipating gas price increases. Or maybe it's, you don't know. I'm sorry, outside our control. But I don't know. Could you just let us know? I mean, if it's a real number, great. If it's not, let's know. Yeah, so if you know what it is, just let us know.
Well, who's gonna know?
I mean, hopefully somebody knows, or else we'll just cut it. We don't know what it is.
We don't know what the price will end up being.
Well, usually it's, you use some estimating projection.
So if we don't know what it is, we don't immediately cut it. We find out what it is.
Right.
It's like saying, I have two lives, so I can reduce it by one. Poke yourself in the stick. I don't want to lose an eye.
Just try to cut here. That's all we're trying to do.
But we have to cut things up.
It's all his fault. He wants to live comfortably here.
Expect to live comfortably, but don't live in a discussion.
I obviously do.
You're responsible for the county.
Well, yeah, now you.
My budget is based on what we do here.
Yeah, so let's find some cuts and make the cost of living and the property taxes go down for seniors. That's what we're doing.
Well, probably, some of these things you just don't shoot to the air. You gotta figure out what you're.
Well, what do we have, like 12 days before we have to pass this?
You know, I can't have nothing there, but there again, I'm.
You're passing this in October,
But not cuts that I don't know.
right?
We're passing in October,
Nobody can answer the question.
so we've got till then, but it doesn't, we don't
Your
want to
public
delay.
hearing is, right, in
Right.
September.
All right, there's two cuts. I'd like to suggest.
Budget hearing in our September meeting, you're saying? How close do we have to be?
Public hearing. I mean, you can still make amendments to it after your public hearing. It's just that your public hearing is in September.
That's our September 15th meeting, in 11 days.
So are we gonna have another meeting before then for like this, or are we going to, because we have some unresolved things, or?
Well, one thing I'm waiting to see is from Lloyd, to see if that's gonna be another factor in there. But, it wouldn't be bad to do that, because I would like to today, but we did get some things resolved. So, back to the last page, Jim says, we're looking all right. Is that where we want to need to be? So we could
Has to see 27 and 28 projections, so we see where that cliff is. So, you know, just like 26, we projected revenues and expenses. If we look at 27, and financial consultants do this great, so best practice. They look at 27 and 28 by fund.
They
We
were
see
doing that.
revenue estimates and expenses, but we have not seen it as council. So next year, it could be like, full here, where it be all great. But until we see that 27 projections, we won't know, 28 projection, we won't know how urgent the situation is. I think we can see that and we'll typically do that.
That could be, what Jim mentioned, a finance committee meeting with Reedy between now and then, and we get back with you.
Can I just say, I would highly recommend that our finance committee actually meets. We are almost on budget time here, guys. I mean, why are we not meeting?
We took the information we did in the August meeting, gave it to Reedy, this is the result of that. So now we go to the next step. So we need to meet, apparently.
Now that we have this, there's something to come back.
Right. This and these innkeeper packs where we can see what's going where. So we will, I'll talk to Jim today and about doing a reading meeting with the feminist.
And then I think reading needs to be at our, from this point on, because we're in such critical timelines to our
Just
budget.
took $100,000 budget for it.
Well, it sounds like we've already spent $100,000. See their bills up until now. I mean, you know. Right. But I think reading needs to be at this table with these council members when we are making critical budget decisions.
All right, so what, so, okay, so you want, so therefore we want to prepare for that. You want the 26, 27, 28, and they're going out to 30, I believe, previous documents I've seen.
Yeah.
So, Steve, we need that. What else? Anything else?
We need them to advise us on our budget.
They'll advise us, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Well, Jim says they don't necessarily advise us too strongly because they don't want liability.
I'd also like to know what changes that the commissioners have proposed in their healthcare policies. The health, not well, the healthcare. See what kind of, I know they're talking about tiers and those kinds of things, but what kind of changes they can make in their
Well, that's
not so
all-
expensive. Well, I know, but we need to know.
I know that's a whole other animal. I don't know if they're gonna resolve. Did they resolve that this budget session?
I don't know, but I'd like to know.
We're paying 97%, that shouldn't be.
I know, but I'd like
Yeah.
to know what kind of progress they're making. Yeah.
I don't know if that's gonna show up in this year's budget or not.
I know, but it'd be nice to know what kind of progress. they're making. If
Well, that's
anything.
part of the package.
Well, not really. I mean, we talked a little bit about, but not, that's, you know, that's more of like the personnel policy kind of thing. We don't really talk about what their meetings are. contracts and other things, I think.
Well, that's another factor we should have. Involved in some paperwork. Okay, so we got work to do. I'm gonna pull, anybody need this on the screen here? You got the papers from you, right? Leave.
See ya.
Okay.